Chapter 993. After reaching a consensus on the matter regarding the Moto civilization, the two of them talked about the flickering world for a while before turning to casual conversation. Recently, the Dynasty's Science Academy has been learning about the space-time splicing technology. A few of my old friends in the Science Academy told me that this will be a new research direction for the theory of space-time and will allow us to obtain a new trump card in space-time. This is all thanks to you. Tarakov took a sip of tea and casually chatted with him. That's a good thing. However, even without me, the Dynasty would still be able to obtain this technology. Han Xiao lowered his head and looked at the cup in his hand. He could not help but look at old Tarakov, who was drinking his tea. Noticing Han Xiao's gaze, Tarakov put down the cup and coughed. The Radiant Federation has a strategic technology like the multi-dimensional sky-opening transportation device in the spacetime aspect, and our Dynasty's research on spacetime is inferior to theirs. The spacetime splicing technology that we obtain this time might become a representative technology of the Dynasty in the future. Thus, it is inevitable that we have to keep it a secret. I know, this technology will not be leaked out from my hands. Han Xiao nodded. In his previous life, the spacetime splicing technology was monopolized by the Dynasty. Now that he had obtained this technology, the Dynasty could not monopolize it and could only accept it. He only requested that Han Xiao not leak any information. During this period, Han Xiao's level and attributes did not increase by much, but he had obtained many powerful abilities and talents. If the Mecha Empire made a comeback and infiltrated his database like the previous time, he would not be afraid anymore. He would not make the same mistake and let the Mecha Empire steal all his intelligence. Tarakov suddenly thought of something and smiled. Speaking of which, the space-time splicing technology is the greatest wealth of the Kundi race. The Moto civilization is clearly one step ahead of us, but they missed out on this technology because they wanted to kill us with a borrowed knife. They're still in the dark and do not know what they missed out on. If the Moto civilization knew that not only did their plan harm them, but they also gave the Dynasty a huge fortune, they would probably regret it to death. Seeing that the Moto civilization had gone for wool and come home shorn, both of them laughed happily. After laughing for a while, Tarakov changed the topic and suddenly changed the topic. With my status, it might not be appropriate for me to talk to you about this, but I still want to ask you, what plans do you have for your marriage? Han Zhao's expression suddenly became strange. What? You want to be a matchmaker? With our identities, it's not good for you to ask me such a private question. Tarakov's expression was a little awkward, but he still continued. The Dynasty values the alliance with you and pays close attention to your life. You might not know, but you are very popular among the children of the Dynasty's upper echelons. Many of them want to get to know you. Seeing his helpless expression, Han Xiaoxin suddenly understood. The universal civilizations would not interfere with the private lives of the beyond grade as. However, the Black Star Corps and the Red Empire were currently in the honeymoon phase of cooperation. The potential that Black Star had displayed had already caused countless upper echelons to place their hopes on him. Furthermore, Han Xiao had always been a golden bachelor, so the idea of a marriage alliance had started to surface. However, it cannot be forced. The Dynasty did not have a royal family, but a marriage alliance was still a method that would never go out of date. Some of the upper echelons had such thoughts, and others were also happy to see it happen. With a marriage alliance, the relationship between Black Star and the Dynasty would change qualitatively. This way, the issue of the evolution cube would also be easier to deal with. After the marriage alliance, the upper echelons would not find it too difficult to accept letting Black Star keep the evolution cube. On the other hand, the universal civilizations had always valued the beyond grade A races. This was the cradle of supers, and the Dynasty also wanted Han Xiao to leave behind his descendants as soon as possible. Simply put, they were urging him to get married. The idea of a marriage alliance might not be Urinril's idea. It was probably many of the upper echelons who found Tarakov and asked him to pass a message to me, saying that they wanted to give their daughters to me. Han Xiao thought to himself. Seeing that Han Xiao was not speaking, Terekov could only brace himself and continue. If you have time, you can also attend some of the banquets held by the dynasty's upper echelons. Many of their children would like to get to know you. Just to get to know me? They probably want to sleep with me. Humph. Boys have to protect themselves when they're outside. I won't give them a chance. Let's talk about this in the future. Han Xiao laughed and changed the topic. Has the dynasty made any other movements recently? Let me think. Terekov pondered for a moment. By the way, a beyond grade A from the Arcane Church has not appeared for a long time. It's not normal. Who is it? Han Xiao had not been paying attention to this recently. Ninja. Do you still remember him? He was also one of the members who attacked Planet Lighthouse. He was the only one who managed to escape with the 10,000 deity scepter. Oh, it's him, Han Xiao recalled. That group of beyond grade as had all been sealed in amber, and only Ninja had survived. Ninja has never appeared in public in the past few years, and the Arcane Church claimed that Ninja had been resting. However, as time passed, the situation became more and more suspicious. Even if he was resting, there's no reason for him to not appear in public in the past 10 years. There might be more to this. Is the Arcane Church lying? Han Xiao raised his brows. I feel that Ninja might have gone missing or even died. From this point of view, I feel that Ninja might not have returned to the Arcane Church with the 10,000 deity scepter. Someone killed him, Terekov said solemnly. You mean the 10,000 deity scepter is actually not in the hands of the Arcane Church, but they're pretending that they have it? Han Xiao stroked his chin and said, Makes sense. Over the past few years, I've already unsealed the Beyond Grade as of the Arcane Church, but they have not requested to unseal the 10,000 deity scepter. They said that they thought that the dynasty would definitely not agree to it. However, thinking about it, this is very strange. That's right. Terekov shook his head. However, it doesn't matter who has the 10,000 deity scepter. Without your help, no one will be able to use the 10,000 deity scepter and pose a threat to us. Han Xiao pondered and said, If that's the case, the dynasty will be the only one who can use it. We might even have a chance to exchange the 10,000 deity scepter from someone else. This way, one of the trump cards of the Arcane Church will become our weapon. It won't be that easy. We still have to see what the upper echelons think. Terekov was not optimistic. The two of them chatted for a while. Terekov had a regular meeting, so Han Xiao did not disturb him. Han Xiao deactivated the remote projection, and his vision returned to his own room. Thinking back to the conversation earlier, Han Xiao muttered to himself, the Mogadorian civilization will only target the Mogadorian civilization. Our revenge against the Modo civilization will have to wait until the 4th exploration phase. Let's make more preparations before the start of version 4. So, as he said that, Han Xiao opened Philip's database and looked at the current size of the Black Star Core. After all these years of development, the Black Star Core had stabilized their position as the leader of the Shattered Star Ring. Although they had met some challenges as long as he was around, their position would not be shaken so easily. In the flickering world, the army had also obtained a territory and had a lot of room for development. In the other star fields, the Black Star Core had more or less established branches, but their scale could not be compared to the Shattered Star Ring and flickering world. Their main forces were still in those 2 star fields. Now that the 2nd exploration phase was back on track, although there would be more people entering the 3rd exploration phase, without an obstacle like the Kundi race, the universe would be able to develop steadily for more than 10 years. It would only become restless in the 4th exploration phase. During this period, the army will have enough time to build in the flickering world and gradually perfect all aspects of the territory. The machinery civilization and the Black Spirit race will also be able to develop greatly. The same goes for the Kundi race's modification. Han Xiao thought to himself, these were all important chips for the army to develop to the next stage. He could not help but think about the external pressure he was facing. Needless to say, the Mecha Empire had a conflict of interest that was difficult to resolve. The Limitless Financial Group had always been fighting for the market and would probably not stop. The dynasty was facing the problem of the evolutionary totem, but it was not easy for him either. The World Tree coordinates were also a ticking time bomb that could topple the entire universe at any time. Now that the Moto civilization has been added to the list, there are really many problems that need to be dealt with. Han Xiao shook his head and let out a sigh. There were many enemies, and they were extremely powerful. In order to deal with them, his faction and personal strength were indispensable. When the players return, my combat strength will quickly increase again. Only then will I be able to deal with these problems more securely. Han Xiao nodded. Although his efficiency of earning experience was not low, it could not be compared to the terrifying speed of harvesting leeks. He did not plan to just wait. Since he could not level up, he planned to use this time to explore how to create universal treasures. A mechanic would always have a way to increase his strength. It was already very good for a beyond grade A to have one universal treasure, but Han Xiao had two. He did not mind having a third. Speaking of which, the next batch of beyond grade, as will be born in version 4.0. I become a senior. Han Xiao shook his head and smiled. Thinking of this, he could not help but think of Hela, who was cultivating in seclusion. It had been a while since they last met, and he missed her a little. Ever since they left that small place called Blue Star, the two of them rarely met. She'll probably be able to step into the beyond grade A realm in version 4.0, allowing the goddess of death to reappear in the universe. Han Xiao had high hopes for Hela. Among the officers, the one with the highest chance of becoming a beyond grade A was Hela. Hardaway, Loathair, Fu Ding, and Loggy also had potential, but they were still too far away from becoming a beyond grade. Maybe I can think of a way to strengthen the officers of the army. Han Xiao thought about it and pulled out a piece of information. This was God's inheritance, information about the primal chaos mysterious energy. According to the information, the primal chaos mysterious energy would appear in version 4.0. Although he could not use this special Esper ability, it would not stop him from capturing it and slowly finding a suitable host. This opportunity was very rare, and he did not plan to miss it. Red Empire territory, a certain transit hub in the Constellation Corridor. The strip club was lively and noisy, and the music was deafening. However, in a remote booth in the corner, the atmosphere was completely different. The two of them sat opposite each other. One of them was wearing a hooded windbreaker, so no one could see what he looked like. The other was an intelligent creature covered in lumps. He looked a little like an upright toad and wore a pair of glasses. This is what you want. The toad man took out a small memory chip, pushed it in front of the other party, and said in a low voice, "The information is all in there. Find a matching machine to check it." The hooded man took the chip and pretended to leave. This time, the toad man could not help but stop him and asked with a deep voice, "I don't understand. I've been clean for many years and have long cut off contact with the people in the intelligence organization. Very few people know my identity. How did you find me? Who are you?" The hooded man's voice was hoarse as he said coldly, "Don't you think it's redundant to ask the identity of a person who's covered his face?" Then he strode out of the transaction site, took a few turns in the hub, and quietly boarded a galactic flight, leaving this place. In the cabin, he took off his hood and revealed a pale face. It was God. He took out a machine, disconnected from the network, and inserted the memory chip he bought from a special person. Very soon, a piece of information appeared on the screen. After looking at it for a while, God's lips curled up. "That's right, it's information about the primal chaos mysterious energy. P.S. Happy Chinese Valentine's Day. I wanted to take a leave of absence for a date, but I suddenly realized that I don't have a girlfriend, so I'll just write my story." Chapter 994. Primeval Star River, Moto Civilization, Three Kings Planet. Recently, there have been a lot of assassinations of officials, which has caused an extremely bad impact on society. The identity of murderer is unknown, but judging from the clues, the Red Empire is behind these incidents. Clearly, Matty failed, and his methods were not able to hide from the dynasty. In the Internal Affairs Pavilion, an important meeting was going on. Many ministers were gathered to discuss the recent events, and everyone had an ugly expression. The series of assassinations of officials had affected the stability of society, making countless Moto citizens feel anxious. The entire ruling class also felt ashamed. With their own safety threatened, all of these high-ranking ministers were furious beyond words. Too arrogant. Does the dynasty really think we're those low-level civilizations that can't fight back? If we join forces with the other supercluster-level civilizations in the primeval Star River to become independent and separate this star field from the rule of the three universal civilizations, let's see how they'll deal with this. A bad-tempered military minister slammed the table furiously. Don't say such things out of anger, someone reminded him. The others present did not take this seriously. Although all the supercluster-level civilizations had a grudge against the three universal civilizations for a long time and wanted to replace them, there was no turning back for independence. Unless they were confident, no one would support it. After venting for a while, they returned to the main topic and discussed how to deal with this. No matter what, we have to stop more assassinations from happening first, but we can't give in to the dynasty. There's nothing much to say to them. They'll definitely want to prove that we're using the natives and compensate us for their losses. Dream on. That's right. Declare that this incident has nothing to do with us. If the dynasty shows us evidence, we'll insist that it's fake. Also, we have to prove that the dynasty assassinated our officials without any reason and submit a request to the Civilization Conference to punish this despicable method. Radiance and Ethereal should be on our side, and we can also rope in more supercluster-level civilizations. The universe isn't ruled by the dynasty alone. Someone shook his head, not optimistic about this plan. The flickering world is about to be open to the outside world. I don't think anyone will want to openly fall out with the dynasty. Then what do? We can't just let the dynasty kill our officers. Humph, let's just give them an eye for an eye. They assassinated our officers, and we'll assassinate their officers. It's as if we don't have supers. Someone could not help but object. Assassinate the dynasty's people? Have you all forgotten the tragedy of the Pinnacles incident? Hearing this, most people's faces filled with anger. They had not forgotten this shameful history from thousands of years ago. The Beyond grade, as of the three universal civilizations, had hurt each other, and because they were worried that they would lose the strategic advantage of individual strength, they made up a groundless accusation and slaughtered all the Beyond Grade A allies of the Superstar Cluster civilizations, including the Moto civilization, before leaving. This move not only greatly damaged the strength of the Superstar Cluster civilizations at that time, but also left a long-term negative impact. Many Beyond Grade, as were worried about their personal safety and did not dare accept the recruitment of the Superstar Cluster civilizations. The three universal civilizations used this to capture even more Beyond Grade, which was almost a fatal blow to them. Therefore, the Moto civilization knew that the other party could assassinate their people as revenge and a warning. However, once they assassinated the other party, they would be challenging the ruling power of the three universal civilizations, which would cause a bloody storm. The Federation and the Church would no longer watch the show and would join the dynasty to deal with Moto. When it came to protecting their authority, the three civilizations were all in the same boat. They had experienced this kind of behavior many times, and they had to swallow their anger time and time again. Don't go too far. The assassination is just a small matter. The dynasty knows what they're doing. They won't dare push us too far, but we have to fight back, and we have to pay attention to the strength of our counterattack. We can't touch the dynasty itself, so we can only take a step back and deal with their allies. But it's only limited to their allies. Don't kill any Beyond Grade as. I think Bayoni is very suitable. His organization is rooted in the primeval Star River, so it'll be easy to deal with him. This will also show our attitude. With just a few words, they had decided Bayoni's bad luck for a period of time. To supercluster-level civilizations, unless it was someone like Manison from the Mecha Empire, Kasui, Black Star, or Han Shao, ordinary Beyond Grade, as were nothing in their eyes. Even a star cluster could kill a Beyond Grade A, let alone a supercluster-level civilization. The dynasty sent people to assassinate our officials, so we definitely have to take revenge. As for the fact that we were the ones who schemed in the beginning and caused the Empire to suffer losses in the war, we were in the wrong. So what? Wasn't that our goal in the first place? We're all gangsters, so let's not talk about each other. This time, someone said worriedly, these are all trivial matters. What I'm concerned about is that the dynasty will restrict us from entering the flickering world in the future because of this matter. What's there to be afraid of? The flickering world will be open to the outside world sooner or later. Even the dynasty won't be able to stop this. If they specifically prohibit us from entering, then we'll cause trouble. Not only us, but the other supercluster level civilizations will definitely stand on our side. Let's see if the dynasty can withstand the pressure. The Modo civilization was not worried about offending the dynasty and losing the opportunity to enter the flickering world. All the supercluster level civilizations knew that even if the flickering world was open to the outside world, the three universal civilizations would definitely suppress their development. Therefore, they had already formed a strategic alliance in private and decided to work together. The flickering world was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so the supercluster level civilizations were willing to work together for it. Even if the Modo civilization was the only one being suppressed in the flickering world, the other supercluster level civilizations would also step forward to support them. Although none of them liked helping their competitors, working together to break the blockade of the three universal civilizations was more important. On this issue, the supercluster level civilizations understood the principle of if the lips were gone, the teeth would be cold and would not be divided by others. Furthermore, the dynasty could not do anything at the same time, so they could only use the harmless method of assassination as a warning. The Modo civilization realized this and was not afraid at all. They secretly rubbed their palms together, waiting for the flickering world to open to the public. The supercluster level civilizations had the confidence to fight against the three universal civilizations. After all, they were different from the star cluster level civilizations and did not have the space to curry favor with the three universal civilizations. They could only fight and snatch. In the Limitless Financial Group headquarters, the Mecha Empire Manison, Void Overlord Kasi, and Beast Ancestor Rutin visited Sorokin again. May I know why the three of you are looking for me today? In the bright and clean Financial Group leader's office, the four of them sat in a circle. Sorokin glanced at the three of them and smiled. Do you still remember our deal? Garutin said in a low, muffled voice. Of course. I'm in charge of competing with the Black Star Corps, squeezing their business space and applying external pressure to help you guys obtain the evolutionary totem, Sorokin said calmly. Kasui opened his mouth and said, however, your results in the past few years don't seem to be very good. The Black Star Corps withstood the pressure of the Limitless Financial Group and did not achieve the desired effect. This made the organizations behind the three of them very unhappy, and Manison and the other two were here to hold them accountable on behalf of the organizations behind them. Sorokin did not mind and slowly said, as I said, the Black Star Corps is not so easy to deal with. We hope you can increase your efforts. No problem. Sorokin chuckled. However, I have already shown my sincerity. Now it's your turn. The three of them understood that Sorokin was asking the organizations behind them to fulfill a part of the cooperation agreement. Otherwise, they could not voice their opinions. It's not a big problem, Manison said calmly. Those resource support, preferential policies, and deep cooperation projects will be implemented very soon. Then I'll wait. Sorokin smiled. It just so happens that my next plan also needs to wait for the right time. What plan? Garutin asked. Sorokin cleared his throat and slowly said, after several years of competition, the Black Star Corps has been in the past few years. After a few years of competition, the Black Star Army and I have reached a stalemate. It is very difficult to find a new breakthrough in the Shattered Star Ring. Therefore, I'm aiming for the Flickering World. That will be the new development center of the Black Star Corps. I have insider information that the dynasty will open the Flickering World to the public during the 4th exploration phase. At that time, it will be a carnival for the entire universe. Countless organizations will enter and form a new structure, especially in the area of commerce. Countless financial groups will be waiting to seize the market. This is also my chance. He had long had his eyes on the development of the flickering world and was waiting for the limitless financial group to enter and seize the market. At that time, he could use economic means to pressure the Black Star Corps. After the army obtained the benefits of the territory, they would have to bear the responsibility and risk of managing it. Sorokin wanted to open up a new battlefield in another base of the army. The production, demand, and circulation of resources in the territory were huge markets. The limitless financial group had plenty of ways to use their wealth to seize market share and squeeze out the survival space of other normal enterprises in the Black Star territory. At that time, whether it was remotely controlling some galactic enterprises to affect the efficiency of resource circulation, using trade means to increase obstacles for the economic development of the Black Star territory, or building smuggling and intelligence channels around different industries in the Black Star territory. All of these could bring more pressure to the Black Star Corps. These were the methods that the limitless financial group was familiar with. Of course, Sorokin's main goal was still to expand the limitless financial group. Compared to the benefits of the flickering world, the cost of suppressing the Black Star Corps was not worth mentioning in his eyes. The small conflict between the Red Empire and the Moto civilization did not develop into a more serious conflict due to the restraint of both sides. It did not have much of an impact on the peaceful development of the entire universe. The main theme of exploration and expansion affected many aspects. Most civilizations and civil organizations were content with their lot and had been paying attention to the development progress of the flickering world. They were also silently preparing manpower and resources for the opening of the flickering world in the future. Due to the influence of the overall environment, the situation in the galaxy remained peaceful. Occasionally, there would be small conflicts, but they were not harmful to the overall situation. In such an environment, the dynasty's second exploration phase was successfully completed and the third exploration phase began. The dynasty used this as a bargaining chip to sign more allies and vassals, making the third exploration phase's army grow even stronger. During peaceful times, the footsteps of time seemed to be even more silent. It was as if one would only realize that 1 year had passed when they turned around. Without too many twists and turns, the dynasty completed its goal on schedule, and the third exploration phase smoothly came to an end. On July 15th, year 729 of the galaxy calendar, the Red Empire finally released an official decree that the entire universe had been waiting for. Not long after the fourth exploration phase, the flickering world, would officially open to the public. It was like detonating a psionic bomb. The universe that had been peaceful for more than a decade instantly boiled over. Chapter 995. The news that the flickering world was about to open in the fourth exploration phase swept across the world like a hurricane. The entire universe had been waiting for this day for far too long. Every star field was bustling with activity, and the civilizations and organizations in the various regions were all recruiting. Apart from the organizations, countless galactic residents were also on the move, eager to travel to the new star field. Many people wanted to try their luck and find opportunities to make a fortune or choose a place to settle down. Countless troops and resources were mobilized, and the dynasty had only confirmed the time. Before the flickering world was truly opened, so many people and resources would be waiting in the Shattered Star Ring. It was obvious that the Shattered Star Ring would quickly become saturated and bustling. The birth of a new star field would share the population and resources of the entire explored universe. Even the original structure of the various star fields would be affected. A massive wave of immigrants gradually took shape, swarming toward the flickering world from all directions. Like a new gold rush, the tide of the era swept the living beings forward one after another. The surface of the reddish-brown or planet was filled with excavation wells. Transport vehicles passed through the collection factories, and prisoners wearing the prison's special minor armor were excavating ores in the ore veins. Streams of industrial waste rose from the various refineries like fingers pointing to the sky. A deep and gloomy ring-shaped prison sat in a ring-shaped mountain range. The deep galaxy in the sky cast a cold glow on the iron-gray walls of the prison. Congratulations, you're out of prison. Stepping out of the line between freedom and imprisonment. Even the air filled with industrial waste seemed to have become fresh and sweet. Seeing the usually strict prison guard smile at him, Evans felt as if a lifetime had passed. The heavy, stuffy, and stinky prison minor armor finally left him. He was only wearing simple clothes and carrying a light suitcase. He could not remember how long it had been since he was so relaxed. Not far away, a hovering vehicle was parked. This was the prison's shuttle, responsible for transporting prisoners to the spaceport outside the atmosphere. At this time, a man in military uniform was standing beside the vehicle, waving toward this direction with joy on his face. Although they had not seen each other for many years, Evans could still recognize at a glance that the man in military uniform waiting for him was his childhood friend. He could not help but laugh. He quickly stepped forward and hugged the other party. Their thick chest muscles collided, making a dull sound. "I'm here to pick you up. How have you been in prison all these years?" "Work, eat, and sleep. Every day is the same." Reuniting after so many years, the two of them were very excited and had almost endless things to talk about. Evans grabbed his childhood friend's arm and looked him up and down. He sighed and said, "Time really flies. Before I went to prison, you were still a thin and weak kid running around behind me with snot bubbles coming out of your nose. I didn't expect you to become a soldier now. You've changed a lot too. Let's not just stand there. Get in the car." The two of them took a shuttle to the spaceport and took a directional flight. It took them dozens of minutes to arrive at a nearby colonial planet. They walked all the way and chatted happily. This prison was located on an planet that was built around colonial planets. All kinds of prisoners were gathered there, and they all worked as laborers on their planet. When he returned to the bustling city, his childhood friend had already booked a room in a famous hotel. He was treating them to a meal to welcome Evans back. After being in prison for so many years, Evans had not eaten anything other than nutrition cream for a long time. He wolfed down 80% of the food until he was full. Holding his bulging stomach, Evans let out a sigh of relief. This time, his childhood friend took out a box and opened it on the table. Inside was a galactic communicator, translator, and other necessary items. There was also a folded mechanical suit. "I've prepared everything for you. I've even opened an account for you with 15,000 anas in it. I'll take the other things. You can take the anas back. I don't need them. Working in prison also gives me a small salary. I've saved some money too." Evans waved his hands. "How can I do that? You saved my life in the past. If not for you, how could I have the life I have now? Please accept my repayment," his childhood friend said loudly. He had always been grateful to Evans. Back then, in order to protect him, Evans had killed a super who was doing evil and went to prison because of that. Superhuman abilities would magnify the dark side of some people. Some people enjoyed the privileges and convenience of supers, but turned around to seek a sense of superiority from ordinary people. They took pleasure in abusing, humiliating, and mocking ordinary people, using their abilities to do evil. The two of them had once met such a super, and their lives were threatened. Evans was only an ordinary person, but he managed to find a way to kill that Grady villain. His childhood friend had already become a sergeant and had also tested for super genes, awakening as a super. However, Evans had tested that he did not have any super genes and would be an ordinary person for the rest of his life. He had always felt sorry for Evans. With Evans' abilities, if he also had the talent to become a super, he would definitely be much stronger than him in the future. "Sai, this is fate. Aha. I appreciate your kindness, but I don't want your money. If we're brothers, don't think about using material things to repay me." Evans smiled and said with a firm attitude, "If you're willing, you can stay in my house." His childhood friend did not give up. "You're already married, so I won't disturb you. If you want to be a soldier, I can find someone to get rid of your criminal record. No need. I'm just an ordinary person. I'll be cannon fodder even if I'm a soldier." Evans knew that he would never become a super, but he did not care. He did not have the bad habit of lamenting about the unfairness of fate. The way he saw it, if he had the time to lament, he might as well do more things. Then, what do you plan to do in the future? His childhood friend was helpless. Let's find a job first. We'll talk about the rest later. Evans picked up his communicator, opened the online channel, and browsed through the recent recruitment information. He was shocked. The recruitment information was densely packed. No matter which organization it was, the first core requirement was exactly the same. Job location, flickering world. As long as this requirement is met, as long as you are not a wanted criminal, no matter what you do, we want you. His childhood friend took a look, shook his head, and said, "Some time ago, the Red Empire finally confirmed the opening of the flickering world to the outside world. The organizations in various regions are wantonly recruiting people willing to go to the flickering world. The entire universe is bustling." Evans pursed his lips. In his impression, the concept of the flickering world was still stuck at the Crimson Tide period. During his time in prison, he had been isolated from the outside world, and the outside world had changed greatly. Evans looked down at the screen, full of recruitment messages, and nodded slowly. Flickering world, let's go take a look. It's finally opening. Star pupil Protoss, Cisco, stood in front of the window, looking at the night view of the city outside with his 7 eyes. After the Planet Lighthouse incident, he had been keeping a low profile and resting quietly. After more than a decade, the negative impact of being forced by Han Xiao to hand over the ownership of the Evolution Cube had basically disappeared. He was still a great leader in the eyes of most people. Although he was very close because he was an ethereal person, he could only watch as Black Star and the Tyrant took the initiative in the flickering world. Cisco was both envious and impatient. He had been waiting for this day for a very long time, and he also wanted to have a share of the pie. The way he saw it, the flickering world was also an opportunity for the star pupil Protoss. They were restricted everywhere in the Shattered Star Ring, and this situation would only worsen with the expansion of Black Star and the Tyrant. He had no choice but to open up a new path for the star pupil Protoss. This way, the Arcane Church would have an excuse to intervene and support him, obtaining more benefits in the flickering world. The star pupil Protoss would also benefit greatly. Thinking of the past, Han Zhao's figure could not help but appear in Cisco's mind. Black Star. He has also been silent for more than a decade. It seems like after reaching the peak of the Beyond Grade A level, he also stopped moving forward. P.S. Organizing the follow-up outline today, I did not write much. By the way, a book about espionage warfare, The Old Alley, written by a veteran master of concealment. 300,000 words have been published, bringing you into 1936, which is about to welcome the flames of war. Chapter 996. Today was the day of the annual Black Star Party. The Black Star Corps headquarters in the Shattered Star Ring was filled with representatives of countless organizations. After more than 10 years, the Black Star Party had become the signature event of the Black Star Corps. Compared to previous years, the number of guests attending the party today was many times more. Many of them came from organizations from other star fields, and they were all organizations that were preparing to head to the flickering world for gold. Now that the flickering world was about to be opened, even more people came to check it out and try to befriend Black Star. After the third phase, the total number of star clusters that had been explored had increased to 9. Among them, the Dawn Star Cluster was the entrance to the flickering world and was under the control of the dynasty. Guru, Renault, and Crown in the first phase were mostly given to their important allies. The 5-star clusters explored in the second and third phases had a lot of room for development. The dynasty had a large number of vacancies and was prepared to share the construction costs among the organizations in the universe. The dynasty's official announcement stated that the Black Star Corps would be given 2 new star systems. They would be located in the Russo Star Cluster in the second phase and the Mark Star Cluster in the third phase. As for the other allies, only a small portion of them would be given territory in the later phases. Compared to the first phase, the dynasty would not give out too much territory to be distributed. They were more concerned about placing national pillars and powerful allies in the subsequent star clusters to maintain the dynasty's control over the various star clusters after the opening. With 9 star systems in their hands, The Black Star Corps was currently the largest organization in the flickering world, second only to the Dynasty. Therefore, many organizations hoped to curry favor with the Black Star Corps in order to gain more benefits when exploring the flickering world. The banquet hall in the headquarters was packed with people, and it was extremely lively. Different intelligent species were chatting with each other everywhere, and their outfits were even more bizarre. It was like an exhibition of all races. Many of them were attending the Black Star Party for the first time. They gathered in groups of 2s and 3s, observing the venue, whispering, and identifying the officers of the Black Star Corps. That woman surrounded by the representatives of the Star Cluster civilizations is the Chief Administrative Officer under Black Star, Sylvia. She's the General Manager of the Black Star Corps and is said to be very capable. The one beside her is the Fleet Commander Haluz, and the one beside him is his student Mia. She stepped into the Calamity Grade a year ago and single-handedly eradicated a galactic rebel army with a Calamity Grade. She's said to be the lover of the young Commander Nero. Look over there. That's the Vice Army Commander Lagi, the former Forbidden Sorcerer Commander of the Hidden Red Robe Abbey, the Honorary Minister of the Magic Department, and he manages tens of thousands of Black Star Super Academies. Last year, he made it onto the list of Beyond Grade A Seeds of the Shattered Star Ring. The one beside him is Tomar, a magic genius. I heard that Austin wanted to poach him a few years ago, but was rejected by Black Star. The one looking at the blueprints in the corner is Reynold, who's in charge of the Logistics Department. The one beside him is the Vice Director of the Intelligence Department, Shazik, and the one with a mustache is the upper echelon of the Germinal Financial Group, Interpius. The people in charge of most of the departments and important officers of the Black Star Corps are here. There are more than 30 Calamity Grades here, and this is only a portion. I heard that the most elite Black Star Guards under Black Star are stationed in the flickering world. Powerful fellows like Hardaway and Fuding are not here. The entire Black Star Corps has an estimated 60 to 70 Calamity Grades and 2 Beyond Grade A Seeds. Black Star has been living in seclusion for the past few years and rarely appears in public. I can only see him at Black Star's gatherings. I wonder if I'll have a chance to talk to him later. Just as everyone was chatting softly, a remote projection suddenly appeared on the stage. Many guests were paying attention to this side, and their gazes were immediately attracted. They all bowed and greeted this figure. "Your Excellency, Black Star." Han Shao nodded, smiled, and said softly, "Welcome to the Black Star Corps." 10 years was just a blink of an eye to his lifespan. Time could not leave any traces on his body, and he was still a baby. As soon as the main character appeared, the place became even livelier, and countless people rushed up to chat. Han Shao was already used to it. He smiled and chatted with those who were either respectful, excited, or greedy while observing these people. In his impression, there were quite a few organizations that were quite active in the flickering world. Other than the 3 universal civilizations and the supercluster level, some neutral civilizations and civilian organizations also played an important role in the flickering world. The complicated interests built the stage for the players to be active in version 4.0, and it also gave the players the opportunity to make trouble. Now, because of Han Zhao's hard work, the army had obtained an advantage in the flickering world. With the 9-star systems as their foundation, they could connect to more organizations and form a new network of interests and relationships in the flickering world. This was also the reason why he held the banquet today. Han Shao talked to the crowd while taking note of these organizations and comparing them to the situation in his memory. After sending off the guests, the officers followed Han Shao to his office. "Army Commander, the flickering world is about to be open to the outside world. This day has come. We need to make more preparations to welcome the impact," Sylvia said. "Just follow the plan." Han Shao nodded. The army had been preparing for more than 10 years, and they had done all the necessary preparations. All that was left was to tie up the loose ends. When the flickering world was opened, it would be the start of version 4.0. When the players returned, the cross-star field mode would be activated, and players from all regions would flock to the flickering world. Compared to the other players who headed to the flickering world for the first time, the Black Star Corps players undoubtedly had an advantage. Han Xiao allowed them to come into contact with a flickering world in version 3.0. Han Xiao had been waiting for this day for a long time. The Black Star Corps now had the confidence to welcome the impact of the new players. At the same time, this was also an opportunity to expand his leak farm. With his efforts, the army had become the largest private organization in the flickering world. It could provide more convenience to the players and was more attractive to them. Over the past 10 years, the combat strength and ability of the officers under his command had improved. Han Xiao did not stay idle either. He expanded the Mech Legion and perfected the Dimension Factory. At the same time, he continued to convert more first-generation mechanical lives to help the development of the mechanical civilization. Although he still had not figured out how to create universal treasures, Han Xiao would occasionally send out mechanical troops to look for opportunities to obtain some easily obtained talents and complete missions. He had accumulated quite a number of random reward chances, and he had also completed quite a few rounds of the Flickering World main storyline mission. The experience he obtained was basically spent on upgrading his skills to obtain potential points to increase his class knowledge. Therefore, his personal level did not increase much and was still around level 300. Other than that, Han Xiao also looked for more energy training techniques from other beyond grade, as in slowly increased his upper limit through long-term training. Due to the existence of the interface, the training speed of his skills could be quantified, and the efficiency far exceeded that of other beyond grade as. After more than 10 years of accumulation, Han Xiao's foundation was not weak anymore. He was barely worthy of being a peak beyond grade A mechanic. However, compared to before, many organizations in the outside world probably think that my personal strength has stagnated. Now, everything is ready, and I just need to wait for the start of version 4.0. Then, my strength will truly welcome a new period of rapid growth, Han Xiao thought. Godfather, I have a request. At this moment, Nero stood up. Speak. Han Xiao turned around and looked over. Nero had already grown up. Although he still had a baby face and did not grow taller, he had already lost his childishness, and his temperament had become much more mature. Over the years, Nero had been his right-hand man and had helped him a lot. I want to take some time off and return to Blue Star to accompany my father and bring Mia back, Nero said with a deep voice. Then go back and accompany him. Bennett was getting older, and, as the leader of Blue Star, he had always been busy. Nero would occasionally take time off to visit him, and Han Xiao naturally did not have any objections. After checking on the work of the various officers, his communicator suddenly rang. Han Xiao glanced at it and waved for everyone to leave. He then picked up the call, and Tarakov's figure appeared on the virtual screen. Black Star, the Flickering World is about to open. You already know what to prepare. I have something else to talk to you about today. Speak. In the past few years, new beyond grade as have been born in a few star fields. You should have paid attention to it, right? One of the beyond grade as has chosen to join the dynasty and will soon head to planet Crimson Ring to meet the ruler. The dynasty is preparing to gather our beyond grade A allies to meet him. Do you plan to meet him? Every new beyond grade A received such treatment, and Han Xiao was the same back then. Over the past few years, new beyond grade as had been born, but they were all from other star fields. Other than Han Xiao, there was still no new beyond grade as in the Shattered Star Ring. Now, he cannot be considered a new beyond grade as. Looking at the information sent by the dynasty, Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. This person was a beyond grade A who had joined the dynasty at this stage in his previous life, and he had made the same decision this time. All right, I'll go and meet him then. Han Xiao agreed, but his thoughts could not help but drift away. Version 4.0 is about to open. I wonder how Hela is doing. At the same time, in a certain desolate universe belt, Ames floated in the outer space of a planet, looking down at the ground. Her dark eyes reflected the boundless dark red color. The red energy was like a tide, washing over the surface of the planet. Countless bones were swept by the red energy and instantly turned into dust. The hard ground seemed to have turned into clay, and with the source of the energy as the center, a crater was formed, which was still expanding rapidly. All of a sudden, the overflowing red energy turned into a tsunami-like wave, rushing into the sky. On the tip of the wave stood a red figure, as though she was walking on a sea of blood. Under the transformation of her species, her exquisite face became even colder, filled with the coldness of someone who did not care about life and death. Seeing this, Ames smiled. Welcome to the territory of the beyond grayed as. Chapter 997. The red energy that filled the sky quickly returned to Hela's body, and the red light in her eyes gradually disappeared. Her aura had completely changed. After training outside for about 20 years, Hela had finally taken this step. In her previous life, she had become a beyond grade even earlier than this, and she already possessed such potential. After transforming into a beyond grade A species, Hela's appearance became even more exquisite. Her skin was clean and flawless, and her genes were greatly improved. Although her growth speed could not be compared to that of Black Star, Ames was still amazed by Hela's talent. Compared to the 100 years it would take to transform into a beyond grade A species, Hela's special grade S Esper ability had greatly shortened this process. How do you feel? Ames sized up Hela, her eyes filled with appreciation, as though she was looking at a piece of art. Very magical. Hela felt the changes and pondered. So, this is the world in the eyes of a beyond grade A super. Everything is different now. Take your time to appreciate it. We have plenty of time. Ames chuckled. Hela exhaled, and a look of excitement flashed through her eyes. The current me should be able to catch up to Black Star's footsteps. I can go home. Ames controlled the force field, took out a communicator, and handed it to Hela. She smiled and said, "Do you want to share this good news with him?" Hela took the communicator, hesitated for a few seconds, and shook her head. "No, wait for me to go back personally and give him a surprise." Constellation Corridor, Planet Crimson Ring. A disc-shaped spaceship passed through the Psionic Seal Ring and slowly headed toward the dynasty's mother planet. In the cabin, a tall figure stood in front of the porthole, silently looking at Planet Crimson Ring. This person's entire body was bright silver, and his skin was like flowing liquid metal. There was only a pair of metallic eyes on his face, and the rest of his body was as smooth as a mirror, reflecting the galaxy outside the window. He was not wearing any clothes, and there were no signs of sex on his body. He was a new Beyond Grade A born 5 years ago, and he was once a Beyond Grade A seed in the sea of star spirits. 100 years ago, he used a special method to lock himself in the core of a dying star and underwent a near-death trial. 100 years later, he broke out of his cocoon and completed his species transformation. What was born from the core was already a new life. He gave up his name and called himself Silver Shadow, establishing his own Beyond Grade A organization in the sea of star spirits. Over the past few years, he had done many things and developed rapidly. Soon, he had a place in the sea of star spirits. Now that Silver Shadow had agreed to the Crimson Dynasty's invitation to join the dynasty, he had come to Planet Crimson Ring to meet the ruler in the dynasty's Beyond Grade A circle. At this time, a cadre came behind him and whispered, "Your Excellency Silver Shadow will be landing soon." Yin Ying's voice reverberated like metal vibrations. His tone was cold and emotionless. The officer hesitated for a moment before asking, "Your Excellency Yin Ying, why do we want to join the dynasty? You're doubting my decision?" Yin Ying did not even turn his head. "I wouldn't dare." The officer hurriedly denied. He had only joined Yin Ying for a short period of time and did not dare offend him. "I just feel that the Radiant Federation and the Arcane Church offered better terms." Yin Ying did not deny it. With the development of the flickering world, the dynasty has the upper hand, causing the Radiance and Ethereal to offer a higher price. It's not because they value me. However, the forces in the sea of star spirits are close to saturation, and only the flickering world can give me enough room to develop. Choosing the dynasty is more suitable for me. However, this is not the main reason I joined. Then what is it for? The Evolution Cube and Black Star. Yin Ying paused. If not for the fact that Black Star who has the evolution cube, is in the dynasty I might not have joined. That's right. The dynasty said that they've gathered some beyond grade as to meet you. I wonder if Blackstar will be there. If he's there, you can make a request to him, the officer said. As far as I know, those veteran beyond grade as rarely appear in such a ceremony. The most likely to see them is Urinral's guard, Dark Emperor, Claudi. I don't know if Blackstar will be there. Ening said calmly. However, if he's here, I can spar with him. You want to spar with Blackstar? The officer was shocked. He was already a peak beyond grade more than 10 years ago, and is one of the mechanical deities. Although he hasn't done much in the past few years, but I know what you mean. There's no need to say more. The Beyond Grade, a circle of the three universal civilizations, has always had a habit of making things difficult for newcomers. If you want to have the right to speak, you have to speak with your strength. Since we're destined to fight, why don't we find someone stronger? Silver Shadow turned around and said coldly, That's right. Dark Emperor, Dragon King, an illusion god. The three veteran Beyond Grade, as of the Red Empire, have the highest status, and the one rank behind them is Blackstar, who only became a Beyond Grade 20 or 30 years ago. He has a 99% chance of taking over the top 3 positions. He'll be the pillar of the dynasty in the future and hold the greatest right to speak. Even I have to listen to him. In just 20 years, Blackstar has grown to such a level. I'm very interested in him and want to ride on top of me. I have to see if he's as strong as the rumors say. Very soon, the spaceship slowly landed in the political core area of planet Crimson Ring, Turinamir Palace. Ening led his officers out of the spaceship, followed the receptionist, and walked through the door. Boom! At this moment, a strong Beyond Grade aura erupted from afar, crushing toward him. Clearly, this was a routine show of strength. Ening did not back down. His unique Beyond Grade aura rose, and he forcefully fought back. Boom, boom, boom. Invisible shockwaves seemed to appear in midair. Sensing his attitude, these Beyond Grade auras retreated like the tide. Let's go see the ruler first. Silver Shadow glanced coldly in the direction of the eruption of momentum, then followed the receptionist with a faint smile to another direction. At the same time, in a certain room far away, many of the dynasty's Beyond Grade allies were waiting. The newcomers these days are really arrogant. None of them are willing to admit defeat, Bayoni lamented. That's right. Back then, I cough. Viru coughed embarrassedly and secretly glanced at Han Zhao's Lord's avatar, who was sitting at the head of the table. Han Zhao chuckled and teased. Back then, you couldn't even beat a newcomer like me. That's different. You're a special existence who broke the historical record. You're already a peak Beyond Grade now. Losing to you back then shouldn't be embarrassing, right? Vera laughed dryly to hide his awkwardness. No, it's embarrassing, Lotus Swordsman coldly added. Everyone present laughed, and the room was filled with a cheerful atmosphere. Over the years, Han Zhao had built a deeper relationship with most of the dynasty's Beyond Grade A allies. Due to his strength and legendary points, he had a greater say in this circle. His position was only below the Dark Emperor, the Dragon King, and the Illusion God. He had already risen from a newcomer to a veteran. Currently, among the dynasty's Beyond Grade A allies, only the stubborn Tai Tai did not listen to him. The others were all in awe of him. There were 9 Beyond Grade as present today. Neither the Old Dragon nor Kant were present, which was even more than Han Zhao's last time. The last newcomer to experience this was Han Zhao himself. When he saw Ening, he felt like he was looking at himself from back then. He was not interested in bullying the newcomers with this group of Beyond Grade so he was not included in the group. He chose to meet Ening mainly because he recalled his experience in his previous life and was interested in this person. If you remember correctly, Ening was a special Beyond Grade A. He had mutated during the species transformation process and refined himself into an existence similar to a universal treasure. However, at this time, this hidden attribute should not have been awakened. In the later versions of his previous life, Ening had a resounding nickname among the players, Beyond Grade A Bus. According to incomplete statistics, during the World Tree War, there were no less than 20 beyond grade as who had used Ening. The one who had used him the most was that late bloomer Carrot, who had the elegant nickname of Private Bus Carrot. Although Han Xiao wanted to turn the bus into a private car, this idea was a little unrealistic. Thus, he mainly wanted to interact with the other party first. This time, Raven Loudy looked around and asked, "We might have to spar later. Which one of you wants to go?" "I'm not interested," Lotus Swordsman coldly rejected. "Don't look for me." Bayoni waved his hand. "You know I'm not good at one-on-one battles." Viru hesitated. Because of the lesson Han Xiao had taught him, he was not interested in such things anymore. He shook his head and said, "I'm not going either." "Blackstar, are you interested?" Max Similar looked over. "I don't want to fight unnecessary battles." Han Xiao waved his hand. He did not want to bully a newcomer who was worth befriending. Furthermore, Planet Crimson Ring was the dynasty's capital. He did not have many mechanical troops here, so he would have to repair them. "If none of you want to go, I'll do it," Kohler said helplessly. Everyone immediately raised their eyebrows, their faces full of suspicion. Kohler was publicly known to be the weakest. He was not even as good as Bayoni. "I'm a pugilist who's good at one-on-one battles. Why are you looking at me like that?" Kohler was furious. "I'm afraid you'll embarrass yourself," Lotus Swordsman said. While everyone was teasing Kohler, Han Xiao moved to Bayoni's side and asked softly, "How have you been?" "How else?" Bayoni said with an annoyed tone. "It's all thanks to you. The Moto civilization has been suppressing my race every day. Last time, they even fired a round of long-range interstellar missiles at my fire core land. Are you going to compensate me?" "No. You'll have to look for the dynasty. It was the dynasty who told me to do this." Han Xiao coughed. In the past few years, Lote Hair had been causing trouble in the Moto civilization, assassinating one target after another. He had angered the Moto civilization countless times. Moto vented all their anger on their dynasty ally, Bayoni, who was also in the primeval Star River. They had been suppressed for the past few years. Although Lote Hair was cautious and reliable, it was not as if he did not encounter any danger. Although luck played a part in his growth, it was not as exaggerated as Fu Ding and Nero. He relied more on his own abilities to turn danger into safety. His assassin association had also developed quite well. They had trained a group of galactic assassins. On the surface, it was a black market bounty assassin organization, but in reality, it was a shadow walker that directly belonged to Han Xiao. After chatting for a while, Yin Ying's aura suddenly approached from afar. Everyone knew that Yin Ying had finished talking with the ruler and was coming over. They immediately stopped smiling and tensed up. Swoosh! The door opened, and two people walked in. One was the expressionless Claudia. He walked straight to Han Xiao and sat down. The other was Ening. He stood in the middle of the room, looked around, and observed all the beyond grade as present. Finally, his eyes locked on a Han Xiao's Lord's avatar. "You're Ening from the Sea of Star Spirits?" Viru was the first to speak. "You don't seem to respect us very much," Ening said calmly. "Why should we respect you?" "Quite arrogant. Unfortunately, this is the Red Empire. The Empire does not allow such an overbearing person to exist," Kohler said with a cold smile. As soon as he said that, Han Xiao could not help but look at him. Why did the format of this sentence sound so familiar? Ening looked at Kohler, remained silent for a while, and asked, "Is there someone like you in the dynasty?" "I've never heard of you." Kohler's eyes turned cold. He was just putting on an act, but now that he was exposed, he was really unhappy. In the circle of beyond grade, as status and right to speak are all earned with strength. I'm sure you understand this rule. Kohler put his arms on his knees and leaned forward. You've joined the dynasty and passed the ruler's test, but you haven't passed our test. How about it? Do you dare spar with me? You? Forget it. You're not my match. Yin Ying's tone was calm, as if he was just stating a fact. Without waiting for Kohler to continue, he turned to look at Han Xiao and slowly said, "If you want to spar, you have to choose the stronger one. Black Star, do you have the guts to spar with me?" Han Xiao was stunned. Why did it suddenly involve me? I'm just here to be a bystander. Everyone's eyes sparkled, and their interest was immediately piqued. As soon as they stepped into the beyond grade A realm, They would feel that their strength was boundless and directly challenge those at the peak. There would occasionally be one or two new beyond greaters like this, so no one felt that Yin Ying's behavior was strange. It was normal for a newborn calf to have sharp spirit. Daring to challenge someone stronger was also a good quality. Han Xiao was about to reject when he suddenly noticed a notification on the interface. He immediately swallowed the words that were at the tip of his tongue. Looking at the notification, he could not help but exclaim in his heart. Yining taking the initiative to challenge directly triggered a beyond grade A challenge mission, just like Heber and Manison's missions. The experience reward was rich, and he could even draw an ability from the other party. After years of research, Han Xiao already had a good understanding of the triggering mechanism of such missions. If a beyond grade A took the initiative to challenge him, the chances of a mission appearing were extremely high. Although there were only a few people in the audience, they were all big shots in the universe and had enough influence. This newcomer is too generous, giving me an ability right away. Han Xiao could not help but shake his head. All right, there's no need to provoke me. I'll agree. Yining nodded and suddenly said, just sparring is boring. Let's bet on something. Han Xiao was curious. What do you want to bet on? I want to borrow the evolution cube. If I have the upper hand or even win, please fulfill your promise. If I lose, I'll agree to a request that doesn't cross your bottom line. Sure, it's a piece of cake. Han Xiao nodded. He would not lose out anyway. This time, Claudia, who was watching coldly, said, fight outside the psionic seal ring. Don't fight near the mother planet. Hearing this, Han Xiaoxin's expression suddenly became a little strange. You said the same thing last time, didn't you? You're here to be the judge, right? In the ruler's office in Trinomir Palace, Unravel stood by the window and looked up at the spaceship carrying a group of beyond grade as taking off and disappearing into the horizon. Ruler, Black Star, and the others have left? There were a few upper echelons in the room. They were all officials who had been advocating for the evolution cube to be handed over. Among them were the hardliner Beccarodi and Ludwell, who had indirectly received help from Han Xiao. Unravel turned around and said, Claudia said that they went outside the psionic seal ring to spar. Then, Beccarodi pondered for a while and said, Your Excellency, what do you think of this plan? Unravel frowned. God's ability is indeed the first in history, but even our technology can't do it. Are you sure he has the confidence? Not yet. Beccarodi shook his head. He told me that only when he reaches beyond grade A will his Esper ability be able to analyze the principles of evolution energy. You know that Espers have always been the creators of miracles. Many special technologies have been brought by Espers. Beyond grade A, Unravel shook her head. Does he think he can definitely reach that level? Even if he can, how long will it take? I'm not sure. We can only wait. Hearing this, Unravel could not help but fall silent. Seeing this, Beccarodi could not help but continue persuading her. Your Excellency, this is a good opportunity. Black Star has proven over the years that the chances of the dynasty obtaining the evolution cube from him are very slim. We can't use force against him. However, if we analyze the evolution energy ourselves, simulate it, and replicate it, even Black Star won't have anything to say. This won't be offending him, and even if he's unhappy about it, it won't be reasonable. There's no rule that says we can't research the evolution energy. This is a technological advancement, and he has no right to tell us what to do. I know. Unravel frowned. However, God's request is that he can only come into contact with the evolution cube itself. If something abnormal happens and Black Star discovers it, he might become enemies with Black Star. This is a small risk, but we're not trying to steal his cube, so it's not that serious. Furthermore, God is now an important nurturing target of our dynasty, and it's Black Star's duty to provide him with an evolution slot in the future. Unravel was a little hesitant. The evolution cube belonged to Black Star, and the dynasty could not steal it. However, if they researched it themselves, it would be different. From a personal point of view, Unravel did not have any opinions about Black Star and liked him a lot. However, as the ruler, she had to consider the problem from the dynasty's standpoint. The benefits of the evolutionary totem were too great, and it had to be recharged every 10 to 20 years. Letting an outsider monopolize it would not be safe. Doing this might not be to steal Black Star's benefits, but to prevent Black Star from losing the evolution cube one day. Therefore, it's best for the dynasty to research the mystery of the evolution cube as a backup. Bekarodi struck while the iron was hot. What he said makes sense, Ludwell agreed. Speaking of which, Ludwell owed Han Shao a favor in the past. However, in the past few years, he had advocated investing in the Shattered Star Ring and suppressed the Limitless Financial Group, so he had returned quite a few favors. Not opposing Bekarodi today, and even supporting this plan, was not because Ludwell had any opinions about Han Shao, but because he had to do his job. The way he saw it, the feasibility of this plan was indeed very high. Urinrol pondered for a while, exhaled, and slowly said, Bekarodi, Bekarodi, come back. Bekarodi, Black Star will be back in a while. Use your name to invite him to discuss matters. Raise the conditions to him one last time, and ask if he is willing to exchange the evolution cube for other things. If he still refuses, we'll make this plan official. Remember, the fewer people who know about this, the better. Especially don't tell Black Star. If he knows about this beforehand, he'll definitely try to stop it. Everything will have to wait until the dust settles. Hearing this, joy flashed in the eyes of Bekarodi and the others, and they nodded. Understood. Chapter 998. Not long after, the group of Beyond Grade has arrived outside the Psionic Seal Ring and chose an empty area as the battlefield. Han Shao and Silver Shadow walked out from the crowd and faced each other in the middle of the battlefield. The other Beyond Grade, as who were watching the show, stayed outside the battlefield and watched the drama unfold in the mental chat group that Lotus Swordsman had created. Viru shook his head and said, Ening actually chose Black Star as his opponent. I wonder how long he can last. Lotus Swordsman coldly said, even if he beats Kohler, he'll only be second to last. He might as well choose Black Star. As long as he can cause some trouble for him. Even if he loses, it'll be better than choosing Kohler. Kohler was speechless. Although that's the truth, you won't have any friends if you speak so directly. Raven Loudy muttered, Silver Shadow seems to be quite confident, as if he's really confident. Maybe he has some special ability. I heard he's a pugilist? He looks more like an Esper. I've looked into his past. He's extremely fast, and it's said that he has a special flying technique that allows him to constantly accelerate and even reach intermediate warp speed. Plus, he seems to have some void bloodline. Maximiller pointed at Ening in the distance and said, also, look at the surface of his body with your microscopic vision. The seemingly smooth silver shell is filled with extremely tiny magic circuits. You should have asked the Beyond Grade A mages of the Sea of Star Spirits to enhance him. Hearing this, the Beyond Grade has adjusted their vision and entered the microscopic state. They discovered that there were indeed dense energy circuits on Yin Ying's body, just like semi-invisible tattoos. There are a few Beyond Grade A mages in the Sea of Star Spirits. With such a wild style, it should be the secret master of the elderly idol group. Although this guy is one of the people behind the scenes of the galactic black market and is half neutral, his fees are not cheap. Looks like Ening has invested a lot. Raven Loudy was unhappy. What elderly idol group? They're called the Ancient Ones. Lotus Swordsman narrowed her eyes and said, he has too many enchantments on him. To be able to withstand such a huge burden, his body seems to be too tough. Oh, that is indeed the case. Bayoni was helpless. But no matter how tough his body is, can it be as tough as Black Star's? That's true. With Han Shao in front of them, everyone was no longer surprised by all kinds of meat shields. Speaking of which, ever since the battle with the Mecha Empire, Black Star hasn't fought a Beyond Grade A Super for almost 20 years. At that level, even he won't be able to maintain his shocking growth rate. Viru shook his head. Claudia, who rarely spoke, casually interjected. Close to the upper limit of an individual's strength. Any higher, and you'll have to break the limits of the entire explored universe. How many Beyond Grade, as in history, have failed to create a new level? How could it be so easy? While everyone was chatting, Han Xiao and Yining were already in formation. The Lord's avatar was hovering in space with a small mechanical army. There were not many of them, and their black armor was surrounded by wisps of blue-gold mechanical force. As a mechanic, he stood where he was without moving. Instead, it was Yining who took the initiative to distance himself. Such a situation was rare. The surrounding Beyond Grade as looked at each other and smiled. In the entire universe, probably only Black Star, a mechanic, could make a pugilist not dare to attack him. Yining circled around Han Xiao from afar, looking for openings and opportunities, but he did not attack. Han Xiao stood where he was and watched him spin around for a long time without showing any signs of attacking. He could not help but ask, "How long are you going to circle for? Come here." Yining did not reply. He continued to circle around and gradually accelerated. His flying speed became faster and faster, and his figure gradually became blurry. He was like a silver comet, leaving behind a trail of silver afterimages, like the flame tail of a meteor. Through the void vision, Han Xiao could clearly see that Yining's speed was not just fast. The space around him was distorted to a certain extent, constantly squeezing behind him, forming a tide-like phenomenon, allowing him to glide on the waves, providing additional acceleration. At the same time, the familiar void energy on Yining's body showed that he also had a portion of void genes. Han Xiao had a rough understanding of Yining's abilities. Among the Beyond Grade, as Yining mainly had a few well-known characteristics. First, he was fast and could maintain warp speed for a long time. At his peak, he could reach high warp speed. Second, his body was extremely tough, almost indestructible. Third, his species talent was rare. Fourth, he was like a bus. Yining's health was not high, but his defense was extremely ridiculous. Even Heber could not compare to him. This was related to his attributes as a mutated universal treasure. Due to his various special abilities, although Yining was currently a new Beyond Grade A, his actual combat strength should be above Kohler and Baoni, on par with Viru and Heber, and slightly weaker than Maximiliar, Raven Laudy, and Lotus Swordsman. His middle strength was also Yining's weakness. As one of the top leaders of the dynasty's Beyond Grade A combatants, Han Xiao did not mind letting Yining use all his means. After all, the other party was a Beyond Grade A with special abilities, so it was worth befriending him. He wanted to let the other party show his strength and gain the right to speak in the circle. It was not that Han Xiao was arrogant, but he had already calculated the possibilities of this battle time and time again in his mind. With his current strength, he could completely control the situation. He did not need any fancy moves to deal with Yining at all. He could just F2A and finish the job. Flying dragon riding face, he could not lose. No matter what fancy moves you make, I'll take you down with one shot. Han Xiao patiently waited for Yining to speed up, only occasionally letting the mechanical army fire long-range shots. Finally, Yining felt that he had finished warming up. He suddenly turned around and charged forward. Like a beam of light, he crossed a large distance in the blink of an eye and charged toward Han Xiao's mechanical army. After receiving Han Xiao's permission, the combat artificial intelligence Spartan immediately reacted and activated the space-time stabilizing device and space-time stabilizing anchor. The stability of the surrounding space suddenly increased. Part of Yining's speed came from the distortion of space. At this moment, his speed was greatly reduced, but he was still very fast. Even a Calamity Grade could not see his figure clearly, only a thin silver line. Relying on his high speed, Yining tangled with the mechanical army. The psionic cannons often missed, and the silver pugilist waves kept hitting the psionic shields of the mechanical army, but could not penetrate them. After probing for a while, Yining turned around and charged toward the psionic shields of the mechanical army like a silver comet. Just as it was about to collide, this silver comet suddenly mutated and split like a cluster warhead, turning into hundreds of tiny silver meteors that instantly scattered in all directions, quickly circling around the surface of the psionic shield, turning around and charging into the formation of the mechanical army from the side where there was no protection. Every subbody was a ball of silver liquid metal, and their appearance had all become a miniature version of Ying. They were all a part of his body. This was Ying's species talent. The transformation in the star core had brought him a mutation. His body could achieve the effect of nano-splitting and change shape, all under his control. Furthermore, the split subbodies also had a considerable degree of combat strength. Because the total strength of the subbodies did not change, the combat strength of the subbodies depended on the proportion of energy distributed by Ying and their size. The Void bloodline allowed him to use the Void dimension to provide energy to the subbodies remotely, and the health of the subbodies was also determined by the proportion of their size. The attribute of Ying's universal treasure gave him a terrifying defense, which would not be shared equally. Therefore, even if the subbodies did not have high combat strength, they were almost indestructible, which was his advantage. Because of this special ability, Ying could be considered a rare, tall, rich, and handsome pugilist. He did not need to do everything personally. A portion of the subbodies relied on their high speed to charge through the mechanical army. However, due to their power being scattered, although their attack frequency was fast, they were unable to destroy the mechanical soldiers that had been strengthened for God knows how many generations. At the same time, they were also enhanced by Han Zhao's mechanical force. They could only leave marks that were neither deep nor shallow on the armor of these mechanical soldiers. On the other side, the rest of the subbodies merged again and turned into a smaller Ying. They charged straight at Han Zhao and arrived in front of him in the blink of an eye. The Lord's avatar did not move at all. Blue arcs shot out from its eyes, and virtual paramount directly entered Han Zhao's soul. The next moment, Silver Shadow lost control of its body and crashed at high speed. It was a complete mess. Even the scattered subbodies lost control and were easily captured by the mechanical army. Han Zhao turned his body slightly, and Ying rolled past him. He accurately reached out, grabbed Ying's ankle, and pulled Ying back. Ying's weakness was his mental strength. Virtual paramount was not only a mental attack, but also a virtual technology attack. With Han Zhao's virtual technology and level suppression, it would take a very long time for Ying's consciousness to break free. This was enough time for him to mess with Ying. Nanomechanical tentacles extended out from the back of the Lord's avatar and tightly bound Ying. At the same time, the tentacles carried electromagnetic, space, and other control devices. Miniature disc-shaped psionic floating cannons popped out from the shoulder of the Lord's avatar and floated around Ying's head. The mechanical army in the distance also scattered and rushed over. They all aimed their guns at the controlled Ying and released a reverse psionic shield at the same time, locking Han Zhao and Ying inside. This way, if Ying wanted to escape, he would have to break through the shield and take away his acceleration space. At this time, Ying finally broke free from virtual paramount. His mind was heavily damaged, and he entered many negative states. As soon as his consciousness returned, he realized that he was firmly controlled. Do you still want to continue? In the mental chat group, Han Zhao said with a smile, "This kind of formation can't hurt me." Ying struggled for a while and realized that it was impossible to break free. He simply pulled his head out and abandoned most of his body to break free from the control. His head turned into a small person, standing on the smooth silver cross-section of his neck. "I know that your body is extraordinarily tough. My troops might not be able to do much damage to you." Han Zhao nodded and smiled. "However, you can't rely on this to gain the upper hand. Trust me, I had a lot of experience in this area." In reality, it was actually a natural counter to Ying. If the space-time amber was here, things would be much easier. Ying's split subbodies were very small, making it easier for the space-time amber to form. He could easily seal the subbodies and continuously weaken Ying. However, this was only a Lord's avatar, and the space-time amber was with the main body. Ying pondered for a while, retracted his aura, and nodded. "You win." He originally wanted to rely on his high speed, subbody splitting, and strong body to catch Han Shao off guard. The main reason was to gain the upper hand for a while. He did not have the confidence to defeat Black Star, even if it was just a Lord's avatar. However, the attack that he had been preparing for a long time was easily neutralized by Han Shao, and he fell directly into the enemy's control. This made him clearly feel the difference in strength, and the battle was completely within Black Star's control. With most of his body in Han Zhao's hands, he would be in an even more sorry state if he continued to fight. Furthermore, Black Star was kind enough to let him display his strength. Yining appreciated this kindness and did not want to continue fighting. Although he wanted to challenge the strong, he did not want to be tortured. Hearing this, Han Shao released the seal, allowing Yining to return to his original state. He smiled and said, "You now owe me a request." "What do you want me to do?" Yining asked. You owe me for now. I'll look for you when I think of it." Han Shao thought about it, but did not mention it immediately. He wanted to study Yining's body and find out the hidden attributes of a universal treasure. However, their relationship was not at that stage yet, and the other party might not be willing to take out his body for him to study. This was very risky for a beyond grade A super. Therefore, it was better to establish a good relationship with him before making this request. After all, this was not a one-time deal. He had to build a good relationship with Yining so that he would be willing to use it more often in the future. In his previous life, Carrot was a close friend of Yining, which was why he could enjoy so many free private services. Speaking of which, Carrot should have joined the dynasty's side by now. It's still too early for him to take shape. I wonder if his experience changed under my interference. Okay, I'll remember it. Yining nodded. If you have time, you can come to the Shattered Star Ring or the Flickering World to find me. If you encounter any problems, you can also come to me for help. Han Shao laughed. Yining nodded silently. Black Star's friendliness was very useful to him. He acted like a big brother and almost said, "I'll protect you." He sighed in his heart. The other beyond grade, as were deliberately making things difficult for the newcomers. Only Black Star was different. This was the bearing that the future pillar of the dynasty should have. Seeing that the battle was over, the surrounding beyond grade as crowded around. This result was not out of everyone's expectations, but Black Star's stable performance still shocked many people. Fighting again after 20 years, the feeling that Black Star gave everyone was no longer that of a swordsman, but a head-on suppression with ease. Although they did not fight, everyone knew what Yining was capable of and secretly judged what would happen if they fought against him. The conclusion was that although Yining was a newcomer, his combat strength was not bad. Kohler and Bayoni were not confident of winning. This was especially so for Kohler. He could not help but secretly rejoice that Yining did not accept his invitation to spar. Otherwise, he would have really embarrassed himself. However, facing such a Yining, Black Star was actually so relaxed. His level was really different. Other than Claudi, the beyond grade, as present respected Han Shao even more. Returning to the spaceship, they set off for planet Crimson Ring. Han Shao chatted with Yining while opening the interface. Looking at Yining's beyond grade A challenge mission, it was already displayed as completed. He did not calculate the reward immediately. He planned to find Fu Ding after his consciousness returned to his main body. This important step could not be ignored. After returning to planet Crimson Ring, Yining said goodbye to everyone and went to his residence to rest. Just as Han Shao was about to deactivate his Lord's avatar, a dynasty personnel approached him. "Your Excellency Black Star, Mr. Beccarodi invites you to meet him." Beccarodi? Han Shao knew that this was an important leader of the dynasty's hardliners and was not on the same line as him. He could not help but be curious. "Why is he looking for me?" "He wants to talk to you about the evolution cube." Han Shaoxin's heart skipped a beat. Over the past decade, due to the continuous suppression of radiance and ethereal, some of the dynasty's upper echelons still insisted on the ownership of the evolution cube. Beccarodi seemed to be a hardcore supporter, and he had heard of this before. "What does he want to talk to me about?" Han Shao was curious and nodded. "All right, lead the way. Please follow me." The dynasty personnel led the way, and the two of them arrived at a government building. After passing through layers of restrictions, they arrived at a private meeting room. As soon as Han Xiao entered, he saw an old but dignified dynasty official sitting on a main seat. His face was tense, and his nose was a little big. His thin lips were tightly pursed, and his eyes were deep. He looked like a rather tough person. "Hello, Black Star. I'm Bekarodi. This is not the first time we've met." Bekarodi squeezed out a smile. "However, this is the first time we've met in private." Han Xiao sat down on the other side of the table and shook his head. He had only seen this person in meetings with the dynasty's upper echelons before and had not really interacted with him. "I'm not someone who likes to talk nonsense, so I'll get straight to the point." Bekarodi placed his hands on the table and said with a deep voice, "The dynasty wishes to use some things to exchange for the evolution cube. You can name your conditions." "Want to exchange for my evolution cube?" Han Zhao's eyes flickered. In fact, such signs had been there for a long time, but it was only today that the dynasty's upper echelons made it public to him. "This isn't your idea alone, is it?" Han Xiao smiled faintly. "That's right. I hope you understand that this is not a personal grudge. In the past, we would not have done this, and the evolution cube would have been fine even if you had it. However, ES God's inheritance brought the evolutionary totem, and even more evolutionary civilization technology, and the evolution cube became the core of these technologies. The dynasty wishes to have such a strategic universal treasure, but due to Her Excellency's support for you, it has been delayed until now." Han Xiao nodded. He could understand this point. As a civilization, they had a lot of concerns, and such a strategic thing could only be assured if they had it in their hands. Benefits were one thing, but a qualified civilization would never place all their hopes on an individual or their allies. Not to mention the Red Empire, be it in radiance or ethereal. As long as the evolutionary totem and a series of supporting technologies appeared, they would make the same choice, or even worse. If he was a beyond grade A of an advanced civilization, they might have directly asked him to hand it over instead of allowing him to name his conditions. Since he was an external ally, the dynasty could not force him to hand over his private property to them, or it would have a very bad impact. Thus, they chose the method of exchange. To an advanced civilization, beyond grade, as were just tools to fight, and the civilization itself was the main character of the universe. However, to a beyond grade A, there were not many who were sincerely working for the civilization. They were just taking what they needed and using each other. "Letting me name my conditions. That's quite generous of you." Han Xiao smiled. "There must be a limit. Why don't you name your price?" "Okay." Bekarodi nodded. "The dynasty is willing to use universal treasures to exchange for your evolution cube." Han Xiao shook his head. "You just said that the evolution cube has a different meaning. One for one. Do you think I'm losing out?" "You're mistaken. It's not one for one." Bekarodi smiled and slowly said, 3 universal treasures for 1 evolution cube. This is the dynasty's sincerity. What do you think?" "I ate before writing today. It's almost past 12 T_T. Chapter 999. 3 for 1. Han Xiaoxin was shocked. The dynasty seemed to have really invested a lot. Just in terms of quantity, they were indeed very sincere. A universal civilization had the technology to create universal treasures. Coupled with their many years of accumulation, their foundation was very solid. Bekarodi touched the table, and a virtual screen popped up in front of Han Xiao. "This is the exchange list provided by the dynasty. You could choose 3 from it." Han Xiao took a look and understood that the universal treasures on the list were not all of the dynasty's wealth. After thinking for a while, he asked, "What if I want other universal treasures of the dynasty?" "If you want to exchange for universal treasures that are not on the list, there won't be 3 for 1 treatment. Some of the more important strategic universal treasures to the dynasty cannot be exchanged with you. You have to understand this. Other than that, if you have a custom universal treasure request, you can also bring it up to the dynasty." "This will need to be reviewed," Bekarodi said. "This is within my expectations." Han Xiao nodded. Thinking about it, the dynasty's 3 for 1 treatment was definitely not unlimited. It was impossible for them to use their own strategic universal treasures to exchange for the evolution cube. Those that were willing to exchange were mostly universal treasures that could be used individually and were not of much help to the civilization as a whole. The importance of universal treasures depended on their specific function. In Han Zhao's opinion, this thing was like magic treasures. The best were some unexplainable space wonders, such as the space-time amber. There were all kinds of man-made universal treasures, such as Austin's Palace of Hidden Spells, Bayone's Land of Fire Core, Radiance's multidimensional sky opening transportation device, Ethereal's 10,000 deity scepter, and so on. The evolution cube was the technological core of the evolutionary civilization. Its technology had long been lost, and it was equipped with a series of applied technologies. Now that God's legacy was exposed, many advanced civilizations had obtained this technological information. This meant that whoever obtained the evolution cube would be able to inherit part of the core technology of a quasi-universal civilization. Han Xiao pondered and carefully browsed through the exchange list again, secretly analyzing the pros and cons. During the World Tree War, in his previous life, the three universal civilizations had taken out a large number of universal treasures to arm the beyond grade as of a universe. Many of the universal treasures on the list had shown their effects. Among them, the majority were magical equipment and mechanical equipment. Most of them were single-target combat equipment, such as armor, melee weapons, special devices, and so on. There was even a complete gold equipment set created by the divine blacksmith Thorn, which was ranked 5th among Thorn's 100 legendary works. A small portion of them were universal treasures with special effects. Han Xiao had basically understood them in his previous life. For example, there was something called the Shadow Lantern. The wick of the lantern was a fragment of the shadow dimension's origin energy, and the light it emitted was the shadow. It had many special effects, and the main effect was that it could open a dimensional door and transform the area into the dangerous shadow dimension, changing the nature of the existences of the things in the area. Another example was the Key of Destruction. This was one of the representative technologies of the Red Empire. It could be mass-produced, and even ordinary people could use it. Its effect was to remotely summon the firepower of the various armies of the dynasty. This required the cooperation of the dynasty's armies. Most of the dynasty's armies were equipped with the Key of Destruction. Once the Key of Destruction was activated, it would temporarily open up a special energy storage space. At the same time, it would form a channel outside the cannons of these armies, which would last for a few seconds to a few minutes. During this time, the armies would receive the signal and immediately launch their cannons. All the energy would be stored in this temporarily opened secondary dimension. The Key of Destruction, on the other hand, was able to open up a passageway on the other side of the passageway. The Key of Destruction was able to unleash a barrage of attacks from the spaceship's cannons, using powerful firepower to attack from all angles. The range of the attack was extremely wide, enough to wipe out everything in the area. The instantaneous, explosive power of the Key of Destruction was even higher than that of the primordial psionic energy. However, because the Key of Destruction was an indiscriminate attack, it was basically only used to counterattack or when the enemy was outnumbered. Compared to the multi-dimensional sky opening transportation device, the Key of Destruction was not as flexible. It would be restricted by the space, stabilizing anchor, space-time magic, psionic seal ring, and so on. However, it had its own advantages. It was portable, mass-produced, and there was no threshold. As long as one knew how to operate it, even ordinary people could use it. However, it was not for sale. The dynasty would only distribute it in batches when carrying out special missions. If caught off guard, even ordinary beyond grade, as would be killed by the terrifying firepower of the Key of Destruction. During the exploration era, the dynasty had used this technology to kill quite a few primordial ones, turning them into ashes. However, with the development of the space technology of the various civilizations, the Key of Destruction was now a little outdated. Everyone would be wary of the dynasty's move. Other than these, there are also some miscellaneous items, such as the golden mechanical blueprints left behind by Beyond Grade A mechanics and the magic forging blueprints left behind by mages. The dynasty had a lot of things in their inventory, and they wanted to use the universal treasures that they did not need to exchange for the evolution cube. As for the items that the dynasty did not understand, of course, they would not put them in the list. Han Xiao wanted to pick them up, but the other party did not give him the chance. After waiting patiently for a while, Bekarodi asked, "How is it? Have you made a decision?" Han Xiao pondered for a few seconds before shaking his head. "It's a little sudden. I haven't decided yet, so I can't give you an answer now. Let me think about it for a while." Sure." Bekarodi nodded. "I believe that after careful consideration, you will make a wise choice. Don't let down the dynasty's sincerity. I hope you can make a decision before the flickering world opens." "We'll see." Han Xiao nodded, stood up, and followed the other party's secretary out of the room. Leaving the government building, he headed to the small base where his mechanical army was stored. Along the way, he was thinking about the pros and cons. First, there were benefits. If he handed over the evolution cube, he would be able to exchange it for 3 universal treasures. According to the items on the list, he should be able to exchange them for combat universal treasures. Of course, they would be useful, but exchanging one strategic treasure for 3 pieces of equipment meant for fighting. Han Xiao felt that it was a little lacking. It was like being at the end of the 20th century. He clearly had the technological information of the future internet in his hands, and the profit margin was huge, but he used the information to exchange for a few fighter jets. The analogy might not be appropriate, but it gave him a similar feeling. It would be best if he could give it away for free, but that would be wishful thinking. There were also additional benefits, which was that the Black Star Corps would no longer be at the center of the storm. Sorokin's limitless financial group would probably not continue to cause trouble, and he would not have to worry about Radiance and Ethereal launching another surprise attack. This could be exchanged for long-term, stable development, and the past grudges were not included. As for the effects of losing the evolution cube, Han Xiao also analyzed it for himself. The evolution cube was a unique strategic treasure. Although it did not have any combat capability, its effects were reflected in all aspects of the faction's development. If he handed it over to the dynasty, the Black Star Corps would lose this faction specialty, and its attraction to the players and other characters would definitely decrease. For example, Ening would not be so enthusiastic toward him today. Now that he had the flickering world as his foundation, the interests created by the evolution cube were gradually stabilizing. However, the business of the evolution cube was still an important pillar of the army's finances. Handing over the evolution cube was equivalent to handing over the terrifying profits of the evolutionary totem to the dynasty. The expansion and maintenance of the Black Star Corps required a huge amount of funds. Without the totem trade, there would be a huge loss of cash flow, which would cause the size of the army to shrink. At the very least, it would slow down the speed of expansion. This was an inevitable outcome. Although he still had to consider the dynasty's intentions when using the evolution cube, due to the covenant, he still had the rights to it. Once he lost the rights to it, the meaning would be different. This meant that the other organizations would no longer need to cooperate with the Black Star Corps and could directly approach the dynasty to obtain the evolution cube services. He would be kicked out of the game. This would more or less affect the various businesses of the army, and the financial losses would not only be limited to the totem trade itself. Furthermore, if he wanted the services of the evolution cube in the future, he would have to use contribution points or money to exchange for them from the dynasty. At the same time, without the uniqueness of the evolution cube, the influence of the Black Star Corps would also decrease. No matter how famous he was or how good he was at fighting, if he could not give others the benefits they wanted, the number of people who would buy into him would naturally decrease. In conclusion, if he handed over the evolution cube, it would be much more difficult for the Black Star Corps to continue growing. Han Xiao was not sure if the dynasty had any deeper intentions of restricting the growth of the Black Star Corps. Did they feel that his army had developed to this point and was already sufficient? Logically speaking, that should not be the case. However, the thoughts of those in power were always hard to guess. The Mecha Empire was an example. Although Radiance did not regret it, if they could do it again, they might not wish for the Mecha Empire to grow to such an extent. However, if they rejected the dynasty's proposal, there would be trouble. From Beccaroti's words, Han Shao smelled a different subtext. The dynasty was in a hurry to obtain the evolution cube. Did they have the intention of publicizing the totem sale rights? Otherwise, why would they wait until now to bring it up? After the opening of the flickering world, countless organizations would swarm in, which would definitely impact the dynasty. If they open up the sales right now, apart from the massive profits, the pressure on the dynasty would also be greatly reduced. Their control over the flickering world would become unbreakable, and they would not be afraid of external impacts. This was hard to say. Han Shao did not have enough information in his hands, so he did not dare say what the dynasty was thinking. If that was really the case, then rejecting the proposal would be disrupting the dynasty's strategic deployment, which would be tantamount to not knowing what was good for him. Beccaroti represented the dynasty to show sincerity. His tone was polite, and his attitude could be considered sincere. However, it was actually a disguised form of coercion. If he were to reject it, some of the dynasty's upper echelons might think that he did not know what was good for him and would be dissatisfied. Han Technician believed that if he refused a hand over the evolution cube, the dynasty would not give up easily and would most likely use unknown methods. It was impossible for them to snatch their allies, but they would definitely use all sorts of tricks. This is really a difficult problem for me, Han Shao sighed. It was difficult for him to make a choice. When the evolutionary totem was born, he knew that there would definitely be trouble in the future. However, the dynasty had helped him withstand the pressure for more than 20 years, and this trouble had finally found him. I have to think about it. I'll contact Unravel in a few days and see what she thinks, Han Shao thought to himself. Not long after Han Shao left, a figure walked into Beccaroti's conference room. It was God. After more than 10 years, God had accumulated enough military experience and was summoned back by the dynasty. He was officially groomed with the same batch of calamity grade supers with potential. The birth of a beyond grade, it was filled with uncertainties. Even a universal civilization would not be able to mass produce them. Therefore, the method they adopted was to spread the net wide while grooming batch after batch of calamity grade supers. Due to the large number of talents and advanced grooming methods, the conversion rate was not zero, and the interval between the production was not fixed. Dark Emperor and Claudi were both beyond grade, as groomed by the dynasty in this way. At this moment, God was wearing a special dynasty military uniform without any insignia. He was skinny, and his appearance was no different from more than 10 years ago. "You're here. Have a seat." Beccaroti saw him and nodded. God saw where Han Shao was and smiled. "How did it go?" "Not sure. It's best if Black Star agrees. It'll save us a lot of trouble. With such a good offer, I don't think he'll reject it. Black Star is a smart person." God smiled and did not say anything. It's hard to say. According to Black Star's character model, he's a typical profit seeker. 3 for 1 might not even move him. The probability of him rejecting it is 63%. Beccaroti shook his head and changed the topic. "Let's not talk about him. Regardless of whether he agrees or not, we'll need your Esper ability to analyze the principles of the evolution energy." I'm always ready." God smiled. "I know your Esper ability is unprecedented, but how confident are you that you can analyze the principles of the evolution cube with your Esper ability? Don't wait until the end to say that you can't do it. 0 now. When I reach beyond grade A, I'm 70 to 80% confident." "So, when can you reach beyond grade A?" Beccaroti asked. God smiled and did not say anything. Seeing this, Beccaroti knew that there was no answer to this question. He shook his head and said, "Anyway, it's good that you know. Remember, as long as you can analyze the mysteries of the evolution cube, you'll have made a great contribution to the dynasty. This will be of great help to your promotion, and Her Excellency will pay more attention to you." He firmly supported handing over the evolution cube. Originally, he could only rely on Sorokin to exert pressure on the Black Star Corps. However, due to the cooperation between the Black Star Corps and the Germinal Financial Group, there were not many results. Only when God entered his sight did Beccaroti see new hope. As a potential super nurtured by the dynasty, God had been roped in by many factions in the dynasty in the past decade or so. Among them, the faction with the closest relationship was the hardline faction that Bekarodi belonged to. They had invested in him long ago and branded him as a faction. After pausing for a while, Bekarodi changed the topic. Let's put this aside for now. Tell me about the primal chaos mysterious energy you mentioned. This is information leaked from God's inheritance. This primal Esper ability entity is very dangerous. If you can't become its host, even a calamity grade will die from the backlash. Isn't your idea too risky? It's not risky. Bekarodi frowned. Are you sure your Esper ability can control the primal chaos mysterious energy when you're a calamity grade? Yes, this will allow me to reach beyond grade faster and grow faster. God chuckled. Humph, you'd better be confident, Bekarodi said in a deep voice. The primal chaos mysterious energy is information from God's inheritance. This copy did not fall into the hands of the dynasty. You obtained this information from other organizations and gave it to the dynasty. This is very good. When the time comes, other organizations will try to snatch the primal chaos mysterious energy and the dynasty will intervene. I've already submitted your application. The dynasty is still reviewing whether or not you can use the primal chaos mysterious energy. Not bad. God smiled. Chapter 1000. Deactivating the Lord's Avatar. Han Zhao's consciousness returned to his main body, and the scene before him changed back to the divine mechanical throne room in the Black Star Palace in the flickering world. He took off the evolution cube from his neck and held it in front of him for a closer look. The small silver cube reflected a faint light. It's been more than 20 years since I got you from Cisco. Han Zhao stroked the evolution cube, and a sense of familiarity rose from the bottom of his heart. According to the incomplete information of the evolutionary civilization in God's inheritance, Han Zhao had already resonated with the evolution cube and formed a soul connection. If he handed it over to the dynasty, he did not know if the dynasty would ask him to cut off the connection and replace it with a direct beyond grade, like the Dark Emperor. Shaking his head, Han Zhao temporarily suppressed this matter in his heart and slowly considered it. He put on the evolution cube again, stood up, and left the room, heading toward the inner ring base outside the palace to find Fu Ding. Looking at Philip's surveillance screen, he saw that Fu Ding was chatting with Aurora, Hardaway, and the others in the old officers' activity center. Han Zhao took a floating vehicle into the base and came to the exclusive activity room of the Black Star Guards. As soon as he entered the room, he heard Hardaway's triumphant voice. I can feel it. A few days ago, my Esper ability strength improved again, and there are subtle changes in my genes. I feel that the door to Beyond Grade A has opened for me. Aurora looked at Fu Ding. How many times has he said this? The 233rd time. Fu Ding chuckled. That's right. He says he's going to reach Beyond Grade A every day, but it's been more than 10 years, and there's been no movement at all. Aurora could not help but complain. You guys don't believe me. Every time I spar with the Army Commander's Apostle weapons, I've improved just a little. Hardaway snorted. Spar? You're talking about getting beaten up, right? Fu Ding shrugged. What's wrong with getting beaten up? That's my Esper ability. Hardaway was indignant. At least I lasted longer than you. No matter what, I'm Black Star trump card. Hardaway's Esper ability was to increase his body's defense and toughness. Getting beaten up was how he transformed his species. Using external force to modify his cells and genes was like using the hands of others to forge himself. Because he was already a peak calamity grade super, only now the attacks of a beyond grade A super could stimulate his transformation. After the Apostle weapons led by Psionic Prime appeared, Han Zhao handed over the task of beating up Hadavi to the Apostle weapons. As he continued to grow stronger, the strength of the Apostle weapons also increased. Since they were able to fight against beyond grade, as they were naturally able to beat up calamity grades. Hadavi would occasionally look for the Apostle weapons to spar with. Due to his outstanding defense, he was able to last a long time in the hands of the Apostle weapons, surpassing the other Black Star Guards. After being beaten up for more than 20 years, Hardaway's improvement had increased significantly. As a beyond grade A seed, he had always prided himself as the #1 general of the army. This time, everyone heard footsteps and turned to look at Han Xiao. They all stood up to greet him. "Sit down. I'm just here to take a look." Han Xiao waved his hand and walked to Fu Ding's side, grabbing his shoulder. Again, Fu Ding was helpless. He raised his hand to punch Han Xiao's chest, but did not struggle. After so many years, he was already used to it. The friendship between men was very simple. The more they touched, the better their relationship would become. Now, as Black Star's reputation grew, more and more officers felt restrained in front of Han Xiao. In the army, only a few of his old friends, including Fu Ding, could be so casual in front of Han Xiao. As Han Xiao rubbed his luck in satisfaction, he turned to look at Aurora, sized her up, and asked, "How's your life energy accumulation going?" Aurora smiled. "It's already very large. I can feel that in another half a year, I will be able to cross the threshold of the calamity grade." Hearing this, Han Xiao nodded. Aurora's life force Esper ability allowed her life force to increase every second, causing her body to constantly transform, improving her physique, genes, and youth. At grade B, the way to upgrade one's life force Esper ability was different. It was very difficult for Aurora to deliberately train. She had to wait for her life force to automatically accumulate until it exceeded the standard of the next level before she could successfully advance. This method had its pros and cons. The downside was that the progress was slow. Every day, a certain amount of life force would be generated according to one's level. Using her Esper ability to consume life force would cause the progress of her advancement to drop. Previously, Aurora had made many life force potions, but they had yet to reach the calamity grade. However, the benefit was long-term. As long as her life force reached the standard, she would be able to advance naturally. This meant that advancing to beyond grade, it was only a matter of time for her, but it might take hundreds or thousands of years. Speaking of which, Hela stole the life force of others to strengthen herself and speed up her advancement, while Aurora shared her life force with others, slowing down her own growth. Their Esper abilities and advancement methods were completely different. "By the way, Uncle, when will my sister return?" Aurora could not help but ask. "I don't know." Han Xiao shook his head. "I sent a message a few days ago, but they didn't reply or pick up my call. Maybe they went to some secondary dimension to adventure and couldn't receive the quantum network signal. Oh, I haven't seen her in so many years. I miss my sister." Aurora puffed up her cheeks, feeling a little depressed. "I miss her a little too." Han Xiao nodded. "I want to as well," Hadavi agreed. The two of them immediately turned to stare at him with a "what does this have to do with you" expression. Hardaway crossed his arms in front of his chest and coldly snorted. She's been gone for 20 years, yet she still has the honorary title of captain of the Black Star Guards. Fu Ding is only a temporary captain, and I'm still the vice captain. I can't even find anyone to challenge her position. So that's how it is. Aurora heaved a sigh of relief and patted her trembling chest. "I thought you had some thoughts about my sister. Your sister is so cold. How could she be interested in me?" Under Han Zhao's gaze, Hardaway coughed dryly and softly muttered, "Besides, I wouldn't dare." When he first joined Black Star, Hardaway did not have much experience. Thus, although he was a beyond grade A seed, he was willing to temporarily submit to Hela and only be a vice captain. Now that so many years had passed, Hardaway had also gone from a rookie to a veteran. His strength had improved, and he had more confidence. Furthermore, Hela had been gone for 20 years. He felt that he had enough experience and did not want to submit to other calamity grades. He wanted a higher position and became the captain of the Black Star Guards. This would be beneficial to his reputation in the universe. The title of captain of the Black Star Corps Black Star Guards was like the chief vanguard official of the Bloodshed Land. While Hardaway was pursuing strength, he would occasionally consider this issue. "All right, when Hela returns, as long as you can defeat her, you will be the captain of the Black Star Guards." Han Xiao smiled. "All right, it's settled then. Hardaway was energized. After chatting for a while, Han Xiao left the room and walked along the corridor. As soon as he exited, he opened the interface and chose to complete Ying's Beyond Grade A challenge mission. Ying has been completed. You have completed all the mission requirements. You have received 245 billion EXP. You have received Character Summon Card. Ying. Character Summon Card. Ying. Comet Glide. For a short period of time, plus 15% DX, plus 45% movement speed, plus 300% acceleration efficiency, and the upper limit of speed is removed. You can accelerate endlessly for 12 seconds. Number of uses, 0/4. You have received a reward. Draw one of Ying's abilities, ability/talent. Tip: Ying is a pugilist. Some of the abilities have been adjusted according to your class. Randomizing. Randomizing complete. Please select one from the following 5 options as the reward. 1. Charge. Endless potential. Ability. Your next melee attack will deal additional damage based on the distance of the charge. The longer the distance, the higher the damage. There is no upper limit. At the same time, you will suffer a recoil and take 70% of the damage from the attack. Cost: 200 energy, 3000 stamina. Cooldown: 240s. To shatter others or to shatter yourself? That is the question. 2. Dark energy absorption. Ability. You can absorb the dark energy in space, recovering 15% to 25% energy each time. Cost: 800 stamina. Cooldown: 24s. 3. Nuclear force, structure reinforcement. Talent. The cells that make up your body form a more stable structure. You gain 12% physical damage resistance. You are immune to true damage, armor piercing, shock, and other special attacks. Non-immune. Converted to normal damage. 4. Self-refresh. Ability. Remove all negative statuses except silence and aura lock. Cost: 300 energy. Cooldown: 420s. 5. Repeated critical strike. Ability. Passive. When you accelerate, your melee critical strike rate and critical damage multiplier will increase rapidly. Maximum critical strike rate is 80% and 375% critical damage. When you maintain your speed, this effect is constant. When your speed decreases and you do not recover your peak speed within 2.5s, this effect will decline irreversibly after 8 seconds and return to 0 after 4 seconds. After returning to 0, the cooldown will be 120s. Life is about movement. Run, don't stop. The quality of this draw is quite high. Han Zhao's eyes lit up. He had a molding talent, and the other skills were also very good. Apart from his luck, the main reason was that Ying's abilities were not low on average. After taking a closer look, Han Xiao first eliminated dark energy absorption. Pugilists relied on energy to survive, and this was a very important way to replenish energy. However, he had a more efficient way to recover energy, so he did not need this. Normally, when there was a molding talent, Han Xiao would usually draw the molding talent. However, the core effect of nuclear force, structure reinforcement, was immunity to true damage, which was the same as the ability given by the Germinal Organization leader. The other 12% physical damage resistance and immunity to shock, armor piercing, and other attacks were useful, but it was not as cost-effective. In terms of tankiness, he was already very strong, mainly relying on his terrifying recovery ability to dominate. This bit of increase in defense was very weak, and the legendary fixed damage reduction that he had obtained from trampling on Tai Tai the last time was already enough for him. This time, the inner desire to export finally turned over. The serfs sang and immediately lifted the pole to revolt. After thinking for a while, he made his choice. You have learned the skill, charge, endless potential. This is more suitable for me, Han Xiao thought to himself. Although repeated critical strike was good, it was limited to the physical body's melee critical strike rate, and it had to be triggered in a mobile battle. It was very suitable for Ying's combat style. With its agile speed, it could sweep through like a flying sword. However, it was not so suitable for him. In comparison, charge, endless potential, was very powerful. According to the distance of the sprint, it would provide an unlimited amount of extra damage, but the user would also have to take 70% of the damage. It was very powerful, but so were the side effects. As the saying went, heaven goes to the left and Iron Head goes to the right. Even if he died in battle, he would fall on the path of charge. This was an attack that would cause both sides to suffer. Coincidentally, in terms of longevity, Han Technician was fully deserving of the title of an expert. He was ahead of the industry by at least 80 years, if not 100 years. He had the ability to recover his energy by taking hits, so he was not only tough, but he was also not afraid of being hit back. Furthermore, I'm a tall, rich, and handsome mechanic. I don't even need to do it personally. I can just use my Lord's avatar to crash into it. This way, there is no risk at all. It's more suitable for this ability than Ing himself. As long as the distance was enough, it was possible to deal a few million damage with one hit. It could be used as a method to end the battle. This ability is reliable. I finally have a more powerful attack skill. Ing is really generous, giving me such a good greeting gift. Han Xiaoxin was very happy. This little brother is really interesting. I have to take care of him in the future. Chapter 1001. My current combat style is very complete. I'm tanky, have high damage output, and have a lot of control-type mechanical devices. The scale of my mechanical army is huge, and I can coordinate with hundreds to thousands of tactics. There's also the Lord's avatar and apostle weapons. My mental resistance is also high enough, and I also have a skill like virtual paramount. My void bloodline also gives me powerful mobility and special control skills. Han Xiao analyzed his current combat style. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that he was very strong. Of the 5 super systems, Espers were formed the earliest and had the highest combat strength in the early stages. In the later stages, it was mechanics and mages that shone brightly. Compared to the other 3 systems, mechanics and mages, which used knowledge as the source of power, were very comprehensive in all aspects and had very few weaknesses. To mechanics, being brittle and having low mental resistance were more obvious weaknesses. However, in Han Zhao's dictionary, there was no such word as brittle. His weakness in mental resistance had also been mostly made up for, and he did not have any obvious weaknesses. He was very strong in all aspects, almost like a hexagonal warrior. Now that he had obtained charge, endless potential, this super high explosive single target damage ability, his combat style had become even more perfect. This was because when an army was fighting, Han Zhao's main body or Lord's avatar would usually be roaming around and would not immediately engage in close combat. Now that he had this ability, the distance he roamed around could be converted into damage, which gave his main body or Lord's avatar an additional layer of tactical effect. After admiring this shiny ability for a while, Han Xiao closed the interface. Returning to his room, he suppressed his joy, took out his communicator, pondered for a while, and called the dynasty ruler's private line. After a few rings, Yurenril's exquisite and majestic face appeared on the screen. It was as if she had expected Han Xiao to call her. "Blackstar, you're here. Your Excellency, ruler." Han Xiao nodded and went straight to the point. "Do you know about Bekaroti's matter?" Urinal nodded. Looking at her calm expression, Han Xiao confirmed that the dynasty's decision-makers did indeed want him to hand it over, and the ruler was also on his side. Han Xiao paused and asked, "Do you have any suggestions? I hope you can hand over the evolution cube. This concerns the dynasty's important strategy." "Do you mean that you're finally planning to sell totems publicly? If I give you the cube, I'll lose a lot of benefits," Han Xiao probed. Yurenril shook her head. "For the time being, the Empire does not intend to sell totems publicly. This decision is based on the consideration of risk. For you, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages." Radiance's and ethereal suppression was getting stronger and stronger. Although the dynasty had withstood most of the pressure, if he continued to hold onto the evolution cube, it was hard to guarantee that Radiance and Ethereal would not take the risk and launch a new sneak attack. I believe you also understand that the evolution cube will always be a risk in your hands. Dealing with you is much easier than forcing the dynasty to compromise. If the evolution cube is handed over to the dynasty, the enemy will have no chance at all. You don't seem to have much confidence in me. Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. I thought you had high hopes for me. I do have high hopes for you, but you're just one person, after all. Unravel explained. After the previous lesson, if Radiance and Ethereal were to take action, they would definitely send out peak beyond grade, as like Manasant and Kasui. You're not a match for the Mecha Empire now. Adding another peak beyond grade, as the risk is too high. What you said makes sense, but they haven't taken action in the past few years. It's hard to say what will happen in the future. Han Xiao did not comment. The situation is different now. Beyond grade, as are usually scattered in different star fields. Once they're mobilized, we'll be able to receive news and take precautions in advance. However, the opening of the flickering world is a great opportunity for Radiance and Ethereal. Most of the beyond grade, as in the universe, are rushing to the Shattered Star Ring. With so many people gathered, Radiance and Ethereal can easily gather their high-level combatants and quickly attack your base. Because the other party has a reasonable reason to gather, it'll be difficult for us to guard against a sudden attack like last time. Han Xiao stroked his chin. Indeed, due to the news that the flickering world was about to open, many large organizations had gathered in the Shattered Star Ring, including many beyond grade, as from other star fields. In the past, those beyond grade as were scattered in other star fields and were very far away, so it was very difficult for them to deal with him. Now, taking advantage of the opening, the beyond grade as of the other organizations were swarming in. The closer they got, the more dangerous his situation became. It could be predicted that before the official opening of the flickering world, the originally chaotic Shattered Star Ring would become even more chaotic. There would be people everywhere, and it was really hard to say if he, as the local tyrant, would be able to hold them all down. Seeing that Han Xiao did not speak, Unravel advised, Black Star, although the evolution cube will be very profitable in the future, it's still better than losing it. I'll think about it. Han Xiao shook his head and did not give a definite answer. There's no need to rush to give me an answer. Unravel did not force him and changed the topic. By the way, there's something I need you to do. What is it? The dynasty is currently building a star-field stargate from the Shattered Star Ring to the flickering world on a large scale. Before it officially opens, a large number of organizations in the universe will be stationed in the Shattered Star Ring, causing an impact to this star field. Therefore, I need you to maintain law and order and suppress all the foreign organizations and beyond grade as. Don't let them mess around in the Shattered Star Ring. Han Xiao was interested. I remember that the Shattered Star Ring is nominally the territory of the Radiance, right? But the dynasty's forces there are stronger. Maintaining stability is also beneficial to us. Furthermore, I don't want any accidents to affect the opening of the flickering world. You can look for Heber for this job. The tyrant doesn't have your deterrence. Only you have the qualifications to suppress all the foreign beyond grade as. Hearing this, Han Xiao could not help but laugh. He did not expect the high and mighty dynasty ruler to know how to bootlick. At the same time, the interface showed an additional faction mission for the flickering world main storyline. The requirement was to maintain the stability of the Shattered Star Ring before it opened. The reward was normal, giving him experience and contribution points, as well as some money and resources promised by the dynasty. All right, I'll go and oversee the Shattered Star Ring. I hope the other beyond grade, as will give me some face. Han Xiao agreed. Even without this mission, he would have done so. The Shattered Star Ring was the headquarters of the army, and stabilizing the rear was equally important to him. He would not allow outsiders to gallop in his vegetable fields. This was especially so for those new beyond grade as. At this stage, they needed to make a name for themselves and loved to cause trouble. After hanging up, Han Xiao exhaled, activated Lord's Descent, and sent his consciousness to the mechanical civilization's planet. Since he was going back to oversee the situation, the troops left in the Shattered Star Ring headquarters were not enough. He needed to mobilize a new wave of troops. Coincidentally, The mechanical civilization had been developing steadily for 20 years and was on the right track. He planned to bring a group of apostle weapons back. The scene before his eyes changed. He was inside a mechanical palace, and his lord's avatar was sitting on the throne. Han Shao had left a long-term doppelganger in the mechanical civilization, and he would occasionally descend to inspect the place. Thus, Psionic Prime and the others had built a Tong Tian Tower palace thousands of meters tall and enshrined his lord's avatar there. Han Shao controlled his lord's avatar to stand up, walk out of the towering palace, and look down. In his eyes was a continuous mechanical city with countless mechanical lives flying across the sky. This was the main planet of the mechanical civilization, Planet Apostle. It was even more complete than 10 years ago. After more than 20 years of development, the mechanical civilization had completely transformed this planet. They had built countless facilities on the surface and underground, obtained a strong productivity, and started to develop other planets around it. At the same time, their population increased exponentially. This was the source of soldiers for the Mech Legion. From the perspective of a civilization, the speed of development of the mechanical civilization was like sitting on a hyperdrive spaceship, unbelievably fast. In comparison, the Black Spirit race's development was not slow either. After many years of learning, groups of scholars appeared in the Black Spirit race, and they began to integrate the knowledge taught by the army. Due to the characteristics of the Black Spirit race, as long as someone learned a piece of knowledge, it could be quickly spread. Furthermore, with the resources and equipment generously provided by the army, the Black Spirit race did not need to slowly accumulate productivity. As long as they learned the knowledge, they would be able to use it. Thus, in a short 20 years, they went from the tribal era to the electrical era, completing a 3-level jump. The terrifying talents of their race began to appear. The way he saw it, if the Black Spirit race, Radiance, and Ethereal had started on the same starting line, the ones ruling the universe might have been 4 universal civilizations. The talents of the Black Spirit race were almost all focused on learning and education. To exaggerate, this was a race that had the qualifications to reach the golden age of everyone is a dragon. As for the Kundi race, they were still undergoing cultural changes, but Han Shao had also gotten people to stuff some good stuff in. Currently, the Kundi race had already started to worship the machinery faith. Although they had not officially converted into believers due to the fact that it had only been 10 years since their defeat, the trend was already there. Han Shao looked at the scenery of the planet for a while, and not long later, more than 10 black dots flew over from afar. They rapidly grew larger in his vision, revealing the figures of the apostle weapons. Behind these black dots, a mountain-sized shadow slowly approached. It was giant King Kong, and its head was parallel to the gate of Tong Tian Tower that Han Shao was in. "Greetings, Lord." Psionic Prime led the apostle weapons into the gate and stopped in front of Han Shao to greet him. Over the years, Han Shao had used up all the slots for the apostle weapons to expand his apostle weapon team. Due to the fact that he had perfect mechanical sense and a series of talents that increased the upper limit of his mechanical abilities, he had far more than 12 apostle weapons. Han Shao sized them up. The weapons and armor of these apostle weapons were much better than 20 years ago. At the same time, he could sense that the tender energy source of these apostle weapons had also become much stronger. Mechanical life forms all had the ability to grow and knew how to strengthen themselves. This was especially so for the first-generation mechanical life forms, which contained the purest mechanical force tender energy and had excellent growth potential. With his current machinery affinity, these apostle weapons were all existences that could hold their own against ordinary beyond grade, as referring to Kohler and Baoni. Psionic Prime, Silver Flash, Mad Sky Hunt, Crimson Flame, Gold Sovereign, Formless Ghost, Heaven Suppressing Flag, Purple Sky Spirit. Bring a group of troops and return to the headquarters of the Shattered Star Ring. I might need you to fight, Han Shao ordered. Understood, Psionic Prime replied. To him, Han Zhao's words were divine, and he could only obey. At the Stargate at the border of the Shattered Star Ring, A fleet with the insignia of the arcane church slowly sailed out of the Stargate. Currently, beyond grade, as from all over the world, were flocking to the Shattered Star Ring. This fleet was specially escorting a new Beyond Grade A who had joined the Arcane Church a few years ago to this starfield. Red Devil Tolian, a Beyond Grade A who was born in Silver Spiral Arm a few years ago. He had been a wanted criminal for a very long time and had been recruited by the Arcane Church. Now, with the support of the Arcane Church, he had a place in Silver Spiral Arm. In the conference room of the flagship, a portion of the Arcane Church's Beyond Grade as were present. Among them, only Tolian was in his original body. Haha, looks like I'm the first to arrive. When are you guys going to arrive? Tolian looked around and said casually, Soon. Wait for us obediently at Cisco's place. Sunhunter's body was small, but his voice was like a cannon. Humph! What's the point of just waiting? Tolian's eyes flashed. Since I have nothing else to do, I might as well find someone to spar with. He had been recruited by the Arcane Church not long after entering the Beyond Grade A realm. As a newcomer, he had never had any achievements to show. Now that he was in the Shattered Star Ring, he could not help but have some thoughts. Don't cause trouble in the Shattered Star Ring, Kasuyi said calmly. That's Black Star's territory. Give him some face. In the past, the Shattered Star Ring only had 4 Beyond Grade as Heber, Ames, Austin, and Cisco. It was very remote and weak, and a Pinnacle Beyond Grade like him would not pay attention to it. However, it was different now. Black Star had risen and become the representative of the Shattered Star Ring, representing the dynasty. The name of a Pinnacle Beyond Grade still had some influence. Ordinary Beyond Grade as were willing to give face to Black Star and not cause trouble in the Shattered Star Ring. Even Pinnacle Beyond Grade as did not want to provoke Han Shao casually. As soon as they heard Black Star's name, the expressions of several Beyond Grade as present became unnatural. They were all members who had participated in the Battle of Planet Lighthouse, and they had all suffered losses at the hands of Han Shao. They had come aggressively, but retreated in disgrace. The taste of the space-time amber was not good, especially for Dylan. Now that he heard Han Zhao's name, he could not help but recall that feeling, and he could not help but shiver. Haha, after being defeated once, you're already so scared? Your Excellency Kasuyi, don't tell me even you are afraid of Black Star? Tolian also knew about this and could not help but mock. As a former fugitive, he was not someone who would hold back. As soon as this was said, many Beyond Grade as were embarrassed and snorted. I'm not afraid of him, Kasuyi said calmly. It's just that it's not time for me to meet him yet. I advise you not to provoke him. Humph, I'm not stupid. Tolian waved his hands nonchalantly. Don't worry, I'm not arrogant enough to choose Black Star as my target. Then, who do you want to spar with? I can't beat Black Star, and Heber is from the dynasty, so he's not to be trifled with. Although Cisco is weak, he's one of us. Therefore, the only ones left for me are those 2 neutral guys. Tolian's eyes flashed with excitement. Austin is hiding in the Palace of Hidden Spells, so I shouldn't be his match. However, Ames, she's easy to deal with. I'll use her as my stepping stone and make her my first Beyond Grade A achievement. Chapter 1002. A small spaceship with high warp speed was rapidly moving through the universe like a ray of white light cutting through the darkness. The spaceship was on autopilot, and there were only 2 people in the cabin, Ames and Hela. Hela was sitting upright with her eyes closed, her fingers spread out on her knees, and her fingers moved continuously, controlling strands of death energy to move between her fingers, training her control over her Esper ability. Opposite her, Ames was lying on the sofa with one hand supporting her head and the other on her waist. Her sleeves had slipped down, revealing her snow-white wrists. 2 beautiful, long legs stretched out from the slit of her black dress, crossing each other in a lazy posture. Ames's gaze followed the movement of the death energy between Hela's fingers, and she could not help but sigh. You're really hardworking. Even after reaching the Beyond Grade A realm, you're still training all the time. Hela opened her eyes and said calmly, "Beyond grade A is not the end. The road ahead is endless. I can't be satisfied with a momentary achievement. I think you should take a proper rest. Strike a balance between work and rest, you know?" Ames shook her head helplessly. She was very satisfied with this beloved disciple of hers in all aspects, but she was too headstrong. Compared to her, she, as her teacher, was simply a salted fish. There will be plenty of time to rest in the future. Hella shook her head. "When we go back, I'll definitely spar with Han Xiao to test my current strength. So I can't slack off. Every bit counts. Don't worry. With my understanding of Black Star, he won't let you lose too badly and hurt your confidence." Ames smiled lightly, then swiped with her finger, opening the virtual star map, looking at the route, and said, "We'll reach the ancient star desert's interstellar field Stargate in 2 days. We can go straight to the Constellation Corridor, then borrow Black Star's identity to take the Dynasty's military express route. This will save a lot of time, and we'll be able to return to Shattered Star very quickly." Before she could finish her sentence, the communicator beside her suddenly beeped, and the caller's message popped up. "It's Black again. Oh, it's old Aesop." Ames turned her head and glanced at it. She thought it was Han Xiao again, but it turned out to be Aesop. Sitting up, Ames grabbed the communicator and answered the call. Aesop's figure appeared on the screen. "Why are you looking for me? Where are you now? When are you returning to Floating Dragon?" Aesop asked. "We're still in the ancient star desert, but we're almost at the Stargate. There's still time. Hurry up." Aesop had a calm expression. "I foresee that a new Beyond Grade A from the Arcane Church will come to Floating Dragon Island to issue a challenge, and I need you to appear." Before Tolian could take action, Aesop sensed the change in the world line, and the old man's rogue ability took effect again. Ames's eyes flashed, and she smiled faintly. "A new Beyond Grade A is looking for me? I get it. He wants to make a name for himself again. There are 5 Beyond Grade as in Shattered Star Ring, but he chose me. Does he think I'm the easiest to bully?" Floating Dragon was currently stationed near Blue Star, helping the Black Star Corps. However, this was a challenge between Beyond Grade as. The other party had specifically challenged Floating Dragon. Although the Black Star Corps was an ally, they could not interfere without Ames' permission. Furthermore, she could handle such a small matter herself, and she did not intend to ask Black Star for help. After hanging up, Ames realized that Hella was staring at her. "Why are you interested?" Ames looked at her and immediately understood what Hella meant. "You're my teacher. Let me help you this time." Hella nodded, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. She had originally planned to go to the army to report the good news to Han Xiao after returning to the Shattered Star Ring. But after encountering such a storm, she changed her mind and decided to go to Floating Dragon first. The other party was also a new Beyond Grade A, and such an opponent was rare. It was a good opportunity for her to test her current combat strength. On one of the sub-islands of Floating Dragon Island, a group of newly recruited crew members was training in the square. The current commander of Floating Dragon Field Team, Vilna, was supervising them. It had been more than 20 years since Floating Dragon had taken root in Blue Star. It had developed rapidly over the years, and the size of the floating island had been expanding. The number of troops and manpower had also increased greatly. Although it was far from being comparable to the Black Star Corps in Bloodshed Land in terms of business, it was now a qualified Beyond Grade A organization. Correspondingly, the scale of Floating Dragon's officers had also expanded, and everyone's work had become heavier. Vilna had taken over Han Zhao's position and served Floating Dragon until now. Although she had a gentle personality, she was also quite serious when she was serious. This made these new crew members not dare slack off and train hard. Beep beep. At this time, the mini communicator on her wrist rang. It was a call from Aesop. As soon as the call connected, Aesop did not beat around the bush and directly gave his orders. Gather the fleet and set up the defense formation. So sudden, Vilna mumbled and did not hesitate. She shouted for her subordinates to board the ship, gather the fleet, and take off. Ames had specially instructed that when she was not around, Jenny and Aesop would be the boss, and the troops would listen to their commands. Under Vilna's command, Floating Dragon's armed forces quickly gathered and surrounded Floating Dragon, setting up a tight defense formation. Originally, the crew members thought that something was going to happen, but after a while, everything was calm and there were no new orders from above. Why is there no movement? What are they going to do now? Is this a drill? Just when everyone was confused, a sudden change occurred. Hum hum hum. The artificial intelligence of all the spaceships sounded the alarm at the same time, and a huge fleet appeared on the radar, rapidly approaching. The next moment, streams of light shot over from afar and hovered outside the atmosphere of Blue Star, showing the original appearance of an armed fleet. Every spaceship had the logo of the Arcane Church. Arcane Church? Vilna's expression changed, and she was shocked. If she was already like this, the other Floating Dragon members were even more shocked. Everyone immediately became nervous, and their nerves were stretched taut, as if they were facing a great enemy. After all, Floating Dragon was different from the Black Star Corps, which often interacted with universal civilizations. They did not have many opportunities to come into contact with universal civilizations, so it was inevitable that their imagination would run wild. Not only Floating Dragon, but even the observation station of Blue Star was also alarmed. The observation personnel hurriedly sent the news back to the headquarters, and the intelligence was quickly uploaded, skipping many levels and directly sent to the decision-making level where Bennett was. The people of the Arcane Church suddenly came. In the Blue Star government building, Bennett was also shocked. As the leader of a civilization that was protected by the Peace Treaty, the Black Star Corps, the Red Empire, and Floating Dragon Island, he was not afraid of the Arcane Church's evil intentions. However, such an uninvited and arrogant attitude was not in line with diplomatic etiquette, and it clearly showed that the other party did not come with good intentions. This made him feel worried. With that in mind, Bennett gave the order without hesitation. Quickly go and invite Black Star's doppelganger. As soon as he said that, he saw two figures quickly rising into the sky outside the window. Turning around, Nero and Mia had already disappeared into the sky, rushing to check the situation. At the same time, in the main ship of the Arcane Church, Tolian looked at the fleet outside Floating Dragon and curled his lips in disappointment. TSK, I thought I could scare them a little, but seeing how panicked they are, they seem to have known that we were coming. Did their stealth fail? Or is it the prophecy ability of that legendary Aesop? Shaking his head, Tolian decided not to think about it anymore. His sudden appearance this time was just his bad taste, and he did not really want to do a sneak attack. In the end, he still wanted to openly challenge them. He turned to look at the commander of the fleet and said, "Make a broadcast and announce my intentions." The fleet commander nodded and ordered his subordinates to do so. The ethereal fleet came with great momentum, and Floating Dragon and Blue Star were on high alert. After some negotiation, the two sides came to an agreement, and the Floating Dragon fleet opened a path for Tolian to land on Floating Dragon Island. Who? The spaceship landed on the dock of Floating Dragon Island, and the hatch opened. Tolian walked down the gangway and stepped onto Floating Dragon's land. A group of Floating Dragon warriors surrounded him with weapons raised, and everyone looked nervous. They had no choice. The broadcast just now had already announced the other party's identity and intentions. Now that Floating Dragon did not have aims, facing a beyond grade A with ill intentions, most people were afraid. Tolian glanced around and coldly said, "Those who are in charge, come out and speak." A commotion broke out in the crowd, and Aesop and Jenny walked out with their subordinates. Jenny was expressionless. "I'm the general manager of Floating Dragon Island. Her Excellency Dragon Emperor is not home. You came at the wrong time. I don't care if she's here or not. You just have to give me an answer. Does she dare to accept my challenge?" Tolian stood with his hands behind his back, looking like a proud expert. "I can't make the decision." Jenny shook her head. "Then you can stop talking nonsense. Contact Ames for me and get her to answer me." Tolian was not polite at all. His temperament was different from most beyond grade As. Although he had washed his name clean, he still had the aura of a wanted criminal, arrogant and direct. Bald. Jenny was stunned for a moment before she flew into a rage. "My hairline is just a little high. but I'm not F asterisk Kingbald. I have hair. This time, Aesop coldly said, I've already informed Ames, and she has accepted your challenge. Oh, you're Aesop? Tolian turned to look at him with an interested expression. I've heard of your name. Everyone says that you're an old, long-lived species with decent abilities. What do you think? Do you want to work for me? You're not qualified. Aesop had a smile on his face. Although he was not a beyond grade, his aura was much more stable than Tolian, a new beyond grade A super. TSK. Tolian coldly snorted and ignored him. He raised his voice and said, Since Ames has agreed, I'll wait here until she comes back. What are you staring at? Hurry up and arrange a room for me. Right at this moment, a group of figures flew over from planet Aquamarine and landed at the dock. Two of them were Nero and Mia, and the rest were the mechanical troops that Han Shao had left in Blue Star. There was even a Lord's avatar among them. Seeing that Black Star's people had arrived, the surrounding floating dragon warriors heaved a sigh of relief. The prestige that Han Shao had left behind on Floating Dragon Island had continued to this day. In the eyes of many Floating Dragon Island members, Black Star was more reliable than their boss, the Dragon Emperor. Han Zhao's consciousness had already descended on this avatar. He pushed through the crowd and sized Tolian up. What's wrong? Are you tired of living? He knew that a new beyond grade, a super might cause trouble, but he did not expect him to be so daring as to come to his mother planet. Was he looking for death? His identity was no longer the same as before. If someone dared to provoke him, he would not mind killing an ethereal beyond grade A super. Coincidentally, the dynasty had asked him to maintain law and order. It's you. Tolian glanced at him and coldly said, Your Excellency Black Star, I'm not here to target you. This has nothing to do with you. Whoa, this be Astra Star's attitude is really arrogant. I don't even know how many people as arrogant as you are. Han Shao thought to himself. He had seen the information of all the new beyond grade as that the dynasty had shared with him. He recognized this guy as Red Devil Tolian, who had joined Ethereal. In his previous life, Tolian was also considered a top character. He was neither strong nor weak among the beyond grade but he always had a mysterious self-confidence. His style was extremely flamboyant, and he was very good at causing trouble. It was already very lucky that he had not been beaten to death. The beyond grade all had different personalities. There were big shots like the Mecha Empire and the Dark Emperor, old foxes like Sorokin, salted fish like Ames, and people like Heber who cared about face. There were also people like Han Shao who could not even hide his handsomeness while keeping a low profile like Tolian. The Dragon Emperor is my ally. Since she's not here, why don't I play with you? Han Shao tilted his head. Forget it. Tolian raised his hand with a proud expression. I can't beat you. Han Shao was stunned for a moment. With that expression of yours, I thought you were going to say something fierce. Is this what it means to say the most cowardly words in the most ruthless tone? You decisively admitted defeat and directly blocked my way. You're really smart. Han Shao originally planned to teach Tolian a lesson, but he did not expect the latter to be so arrogant and admit defeat. Although Tolian was very arrogant, he knew that Blue Star was Black Star's home planet. He did not dare provoke the peak beyond grade a Han Shao, so he insisted on only challenging Floating Dragon and refused to fight Han Shao. With such a troublesome behavior, Han Shao could not directly deal with him. There were still rules in the challenge between beyond grade although they were allies, he could not rashly overstep his boundaries. At this time, the space not far away suddenly rippled, and the Palace of Hidden Spells jumped out of the void. Seeing this, Han Shao was shocked. Austin, it's you again? Why are you everywhere? You really know how to join in the fun. However, this time, Austin was not here to be a bystander. After the Palace of Hidden Spells teleported over, a small teleportation gate appeared, and a small spaceship flew out and landed on Floating Dragon's dock. The hatch opened, and long white legs stepped out. Ames and Hela walked out of the spaceship one after another. It's a little too late to travel, so I called Austin to help me teleport. Ames smiled at everyone. Han Shao could not help but look up. At the top of the Palace of Hidden Spells, Austin was sitting cross-legged in the air in the form of a child. He raised 2 fingers and casually waved them in front of his forehead, making a mocking salute to Han Xiao. Show off, Han Xiao thought to himself. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Ames looked at Tolian and stopped smiling. You're the one who wants to challenge, floating dragon. Why are you still asking if you know? Tolian snorted. Ames nodded and suddenly took a step back, revealing Hela beside her. She chuckled and said, if you want to fight with me, sure, beat my student first. She's also a member of Floating Dragon. Hela directly stepped forward and placed her in front of Ames. Although Han Zhao's doppelganger was also present, she did not even look at it after landing. Her eyes were locked on Tolian, and her expression was indifferent and extremely focused. Tolian was a little surprised. He sized her up and remembered the information about the Black Star Corps that he had seen not long ago. He was a little dissatisfied. I recognize her. She seems to be an officer of the Black Star Corps. She's just a calamity grade. Do you want her to die, or are you trying to humiliate me? However, just as he said that, a surge of death energy exploded from Hela's body, accompanied by a strong energy fluctuation that soared into the sky. Rumble, the shock waves spread out like thunder. The ground of the floating dragon dock cracked, and the surrounding people were blown away. Everyone hurriedly stabilized themselves and looked at the battlefield again. Their eyes were focused on Hela, who was brimming with red energy. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock and astonishment. This level of energy fluctuation, a new beyond grade A. Chapter 1003. A Beyond Grade A. Tolian's expression changed. All the new beyond grade, as in the past few years, had been recorded by the advanced civilizations, and he knew all of them. However, Hela's name was not in this information, which immediately messed up his plans. Hela had just entered the beyond grade A realm, and this was the first time she had appeared in front of others. Naturally, the advanced civilizations did not have any information on her. Only today did the goddess of death truly appear. Nero's body trembled, and he was overjoyed. Sister Hela has actually reached the beyond grade A realm. Although they had not seen each other for many years, Nero had always remembered the favor of Hela, giving him the mark of death. Now that Hela had finally taken that step, he was truly excited and could not help but share this news with the officers of the army. Is she the healer you guys always talk about? Mia had a shocked expression as she pulled Nero aside and quietly asked. Mia had joined the army after Hela had left, and she often heard Hela's name from Nero and the other important officers of the army. In her heart, this mysterious captain of the Black Star Guards was extremely mysterious. As the saying went, sister is not in the world, but there are legends of her. Today, Mia finally got what she wanted and saw Hela in person. She felt that it was indeed true that hearing about her was not as good as meeting her in person. Looking at the strong aura emanating from Hela's body, Mia was instantly subdued. Hela was in line with all the images she had of a strong female. In her previous life, she was Hela's follower. Now that they were meeting for the first time, it was also like comparing a turtle to a mung bean. Han Xiao felt Hela's aura and was sincerely gratified. The goddess of death I'm familiar with is finally back. She didn't disappoint me. Austin was also stunned for a moment before a smile appeared on his face. This was the smile of a bystander waiting to watch a good show. The 6th beyond grade A of the Shattered Star Ring? This is going to be interesting. Just as everyone was shocked, Tolian's face fell, and his expression became slightly ugly. The situation was somewhat out of his expectations. He had originally thought that his opponent would be Ames, but a new beyond grade A had suddenly popped out. Although Ames was a veteran beyond grade A and might be stronger, her abilities were recorded in detail in the data, which was very important. Now that his opponent had changed to a new beyond grade A with unknown abilities, he felt that it would be even more difficult to deal with. He had seen Hela's information before, but that was more than 20 years ago. Now that she had become a beyond grade, who knew what new abilities she might have? Without any new information, Tolian was not confident of winning, so he was a little hesitant. You don't waste my time. Do you dare to fight or not? Hela's eyes flashed with a cold red light. Her body was surrounded by energy, and her aura was oppressive. She turned a blind eye to the surprise of the people around her and only focused on her target. She had always been decisive and did not like to talk nonsense. If she could fight, she would fight. Okay. Tolian didn't think too much about it and agreed. Since they were both beyond grade, as it did not matter who he won. It seemed that he could only fight with Hela, so he did not choose. At this time, Han Shao stood with his arms crossed and said calmly, "If you want to fight, stay away from Blue Star. If you want to fight, stay away from Planet Aquamarine. If you hurt any of the plants on Planet Aquamarine, Tolian, you won't be leaving today. I don't dare." Tolian snorted coldly. He knew that he did not dare to attack Han, Zhao's mother planet. Otherwise, even if the other party chopped him up on the spot, the Arcane Church would not have a reason to make things difficult for him. Both sides reached a consensus, and everyone quickly pulled away, choosing a space slightly further away from Blue Star as the battlefield. Only Hela and Tolian were present. The two faced each other from afar, and their auras continued to rise. Everyone's eyes were focused on the two of them, holding their breaths as they watched the battle. The next moment, the two of them moved. Tolian's body suddenly swelled, his muscles bulging, his bone spurs protruding and breaking through his skin. A pair of curled demon horns grew on his head, and two pairs of bat-like wings unfolded on his back. His tailbone continued to elongate, branching into three bony tails. His entire appearance turned into a red creature that looked like a demon. His muscles were bulging, and his skin was covered with mysterious patterns. He looked extremely ferocious. "He's a pugilist?" Seeing this, Ames raised her brows. "No, he's a mage." At this time, a voice sounded from his side. Han Zhao's avatar came over and slowly read out Tolian's information. He has the demon bloodline, which was sublimated in the process of becoming a beyond grade A. He just used the true name Liberation, which is unique to the demon race. This red appearance is his true form, which is also the origin of the nickname Red Devil. He's a close combat mage who leans towards transformation and enhancement. His species talent gives him extraordinary resistance and powerful recovery ability. He's a relatively rare Fathom tank. If you compare him, his combat style is somewhat similar to the Empire's Milizaus. So that's how it is. Ames nodded, turned around, and said with a playful tone, "Long time no see. How have you been?" "I've been great." Han Shao nodded and joked, "Did you miss me?" "Why would I miss you?" Ames smiled, turned her head, and continued to look at the battlefield. On the battlefield, Tolian completed his transformation and charged straight at Hela. At the same time, dense dark blue mana gushed out from his body, turning into buff spells one after another. His body continued to grow, and at the same time, colorful magic circuits appeared on the surface of his body, continuously increasing his attributes. He did not know what new abilities Hela had, but the Esper ability itself would not change. According to the information from 20 years ago, Hela was a mid-range combat Esper who controlled some kind of energy, so he chose to use the close-range combat tactic that he was best at. The true name Liberation of the Demon Race gave him powerful resistance and recovery, and the various magic shields as a mage tank supported his body. When necessary, he could even act as a long-range spell cannon. Ames' force field Esper ability was mainly control, and its lethality was not outstanding. The way he saw it, his combat style restrained Ames, so his chances of winning were not low. That was why Tolian had the confidence to challenge Ames. The opponent was coming menacingly, but Hela did not retreat. Instead, she advanced. Dark red death energy protected her body, and she charged forward with a long flame tail. Bang! The sound of the collision seemed to ring in everyone's hearts. The two figures collided fiercely, and a dark red energy shockwave exploded at the center. In terms of strength, Tolian, who had the buff spell, had the absolute advantage. Hela was directly sent flying. However, when an opportunity had appeared, Tolian did not take advantage of it. Instead, he suddenly froze in place, as if he had discovered something strange. However, Hela did not stop. She instantly stabilized herself and pointed forward. The death energy suddenly spread out, turning into a sea of red light. Countless death energy beams shot out, covering the sky and covering the earth as they shot toward Tolian. Shield! Tolian woke up from a dream. His hand gestures quickly changed, and he covered himself with layers of magic shields like a tortoise shell. Countless death energy arrows bombarded the shield, and the layers of the shield instantly collapsed and shattered. Bang, 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 bang. Every time an arrow hit the shield, there would be a burst of spiritual fluctuations. Every spectator was shaken, and the sound of the explosion did not need a medium. It sounded directly in their minds, and their brains were trembling. Hela's death energy had multiple damage, and it contained both physical and spiritual attributes. Now, there was also a portion of true damage, which was very difficult to defend against. Tolian did not passively take the beating, and he continued to rush at Hela. Although Hela was good at mid-range attacks, she did not use a wretched method of fighting. Instead, she attacked head-on with extremely tough methods. The two figures constantly flashed past each other, and they were sent flying again and again. They quickly exchanged hundreds of blows, and it was difficult to tell who had the upper hand. Hela had always gone all out and did not hold back. The intensity of the battle gradually exceeded the scope of a spar. Godfather, Sister Hela, doesn't seem to be in a good situation. Han Xiao was focused on watching the battle when Nero suddenly brought Mia over, his tone somewhat worried. You're thinking too much. Han Xiao could not help but laugh. Isn't that so? Sister Hela is being sent flying time and time again. Her close combat ability is clearly not as good as the opponent's, but she doesn't use a guerrilla method. Isn't this a little? Nero carefully asked. Han Xiao shook his head with a smile. Look at Tolian's body carefully. His condition is not as good as you think. Hearing this, Nero hurriedly observed carefully. The speed of a beyond grade, it was too fast, and it was difficult for him to see clearly. After a while, he barely managed to see the abnormality on Tolian's body, and his spirits were immediately lifted. He saw that Tolian's body was unknowingly covered in dark red death energy. It was filled with corrosive properties, and it was constantly corroding his magic and body, unable to be removed. Although they entered the Beyond Grade A realm a few years apart, it's difficult for a Beyond Grade A to make much progress in a few years. Therefore, their strength is actually at the same level. Don't look at me. I'm an exception. Han Xiao patted Nero's shoulder and explained, at this level, Hela's Esper ability has the absolute advantage. He had been calm the entire time and was not worried about Hela at all. This was because only he knew how strong a Beyond Grade A Hela was. Control of Death. This was an ability that was ranked in the list of super high-risk Esper abilities. He was very clear that after reaching the Beyond Grade A realm, Hela's Esper ability would undergo a qualitative change. In his previous life, there was far too much information regarding Hela's ability, and it was all obtained through the testing of the players' lives. Han Xiao was very familiar with it. Firstly, after reaching the Beyond Grade A realm, Hela had an exclusive passive ability. Every time the death energy hit the target, a layer of special status, Death's Erosion, would be stacked. Death's Erosion had a total of 15 layers. The first layer's effect was to reduce the enemy's recovery by 20% and their defense by 15%. Upon reaching the fifth layer, the enemy's recovery would be reduced by 40% and their defense would be reduced by 25%. Every 10 seconds, a buff would be removed. Upon reaching the 10th layer, the enemy's recovery would be reduced by 60%, their defense would be reduced by 35%, all attributes would be reduced by 10%, and their cells would begin to collapse. Every 20 seconds, they would lose 0.8% of their health. Upon reaching the 15th layer, the enemy's recovery would be reduced by 80%, their defense would be reduced by 45%, all attributes would be reduced by 20%, and all buffs would be removed. Upon reaching the 15th layer, Hela would be able to release a special ability with no cooldown, exploding all of the death's erosions, immediately initiating an instant death test. The conditions for the test were very harsh. Normally, it would not take effect on a target whose level was higher than the user's. However, even if the test failed, there would still be a special effect. It could directly evaporate 20% to 30% of the enemy's health, and, at the same time, reduce the target's maximum health by 8% to 12%. After the explosion, as long as there was a short cooldown, a new round of Death's Erosion would be stacked on the same target. In order to interrupt the stacking of Death's Erosion, the death energy within the target's body would have to be dispersed. If one did not have a similar ability, they would have to rely on their own resistance to endure it. The duration of Death's Erosion depended on the target's resistance. The higher the layer, the longer the duration. For example, the first layer would only last for 3 seconds, the second layer would last for 5 seconds, and the third layer would last for 8 seconds. If the target were to endure it, it would only cause the layer to gradually decrease. For example, after 8 seconds of the third layer, the effect would not completely disappear. Instead, it would fall back to the second layer and recalculate the duration of that layer. It would decrease with each layer, and it would be extremely difficult to completely dispel it. In addition to this core ability, Hela's Death Arcana also had the passive attribute of Lifesteal. Every time she hit a target with Vitality, 10% to 20% of the damage would be converted into her own health. It was equivalent to stealing the life energy of a living being. She was strong in group battles, and the more enemies there were, the faster she would recover her health. Also, every time the death energy hit the target, there would be a follow-up damage lasting for 3 seconds, and the value was equivalent to 50% to 70% of the original damage. Moreover, after Hela's transformation, she had a special ability. It was useless to players, but it was a threat to others. That was, she could use her Death Arcana to deprive the cells of vitality of the living, reducing the upper limit of the number of cell divisions and reducing the lifespan of others. It was because of this ability that the vast majority of the Beyond grade, as in the universe, avoided her like the plague, and not many were willing to fight with her. If you could reduce my lifespan by 1 second every time you hit me, who would dare to play with you? However, other than Han Xiao, no one in the universe knew about this yet. Tolian, who was currently fighting with Hela, also knew nothing about this. Bang, bang, bang. The battle between the two on the battlefield became more and more intense. The surging magic and the biting cold death energy collided again and again, causing energy shockwaves to explode. Tolian might have originally only intended to spar, but under Hela's powerful offensive, he could not hold back at all. He could only increase his strength. The situation was now out of his control, and it had almost turned from a spar into a duel of life and death. If they did not know that this was the first time the two had met, the onlookers would have thought that there was some deep hatred between the two, and it was either you die or I live. What a crazy woman! Tolian was furious, and his attacks became fiercer and fiercer. Even though his magic shield could block most of the attacks, his body would occasionally be hit. As Death's Erosion continued to stack, he felt that something was wrong the more he fought. Not only was his recovery ability suppressed, but the effect of the buff spells on his body also seemed to be getting weaker and weaker. It was becoming more and more difficult for his body to accept the transformation of the magic energy. Furthermore, after stacking more than 10 layers, he found that his cells were constantly being destroyed and his injuries rapidly worsened. He could only barely maintain his current state with his suppressed recovery ability. Her Esper ability is too strong. Tolian's mood became heavier and heavier. Although he had also caused some damage to Hela, these injuries were almost instantly healed. On the other hand, because of the raging death energy in his body, his condition was getting worse and worse. Comparing the two, it was obvious who had the upper hand. He had actually fallen into a passive state. This new Beyond Grade A Super is actually so powerful. If that's the case, Tolian's eyes turned cold. Magic energy gathered in his hands, followed by blood gushing out from his fingertips. The two mixed and turned into a strange purple blood flame. Austin, who was watching the battle, suddenly narrowed his eyes. As a master mage, he recognized what spell this was. It was a high-level forbidden spell unique to the demon race, corrupted blood. Not good. Austin's heart skipped a beat. This spell was a forbidden spell. It used a special method to transform the blood of the demon race into dirty and invasive genes, thereby contaminating the bloodline of others and causing irreversible damage to the genes. It was not very powerful, but it was very insidious. It was a method unique to the demon race. He knew very well that Tolian's use of this forbidden spell would not help the battle at all, but it could contaminate Hela's genes. His intention was very insidious. It was a sneak attack. Hela's intuition also sensed danger. She hurriedly retreated, but Tolian chased after her with the purple flame. His speed was faster, and the distance between the two of them was constantly shrinking. "Don't blame me." Tolian's expression was fierce. Because Hela was a cadre of the Black Star Corps, he was worried that he would provoke Han Shao. Originally, he did not intend to do this, but now that he was really angry, he could not be lenient and was determined to use this move. As a former wanted criminal who had slaughtered many surface civilizations for fun, he did not have any moral standards. Seeing that she could not get rid of Tolian, Hela narrowed her eyes and suddenly turned around. A highly concentrated beam of death energy pierced through the magic shield and blasted into his chest. At this moment, Tolian's body suddenly discharged a large amount of magic energy. His cells, which had been severely corroded by death energy, could not bear any enhancement effect, and all the buffs were shattered and disappeared. Tolian's expression changed drastically. However, before he could react, Hela suddenly stretched out her hand, aimed at him from afar, and clenched her 5 fingers. Reaper's Harvest. A full 15 layers of death corrosion directly detonated. Tolian's heart suddenly tightened, and a life-threatening intuition frantically warned him in his mind. He felt all the death energy in his body become restless, like a bomb that had its fuse ignited, quickly exploding in his body. The next moment, intense pain penetrated his body and soul in an instant. Boom! Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, before his attack could even land on Hela, his body exploded into a large cloud of blood mist. Chapter 1004. Black and purple blood mist spurted out from every pore of his body. It was as if a firework had exploded in the air. The forbidden technique was directly interrupted. The next moment, Tolian flew out of the blood mist and quickly retreated. His face was filled with horror, and his body was covered in blood. In that instant, he felt the shadow of death. Ever since he entered the beyond Grade A realm, Tolian had never experienced the feeling of his life being threatened again. This blow instantly awakened his memories, and he once again felt this feeling. This blow vaporized more than 20% of his health. A beyond grade, it had at least 2 to 3 million health points. This blow was considered a heavy blow, and it added several negative statuses. The detonation of death energy in his body almost caused his cells to completely collapse, leaving Tolian with lingering fear. The power of Hela's Esper ability was beyond his imagination. At this moment, Tolian looked at Hela from afar, his eyes filled with fear. Death's harvest had caused him heavy injuries, but the detonation of all the death energy had also removed the layers of death's erosion. Tolian's recovery ability immediately returned to normal, and the injuries in his body gradually healed. His health slowly rose. However, his maximum health was reduced by about 10%, and he could not return to his peak state. Hela would not sit back and watch her opponent recover. Taking advantage of Tolian's stunned state, she immediately stopped retreating and closed in on Tolian, launching a storm of attacks. Death energy swept through the sky, covering the entire sky. Tolian did not understand Hela's Esper ability, so he was bewildered. Seeing Hela approach, he hurriedly retreated, not daring to attack head-on like before. He only dared to throw spells from afar, and at the same time, he kept applying layer after layer of shields on himself, unwilling to be hit by the death energy again. The situation immediately reversed, and it became a chase. Tolian fled like a rat, being chased around by Hela. The power of this move also made Austin jump in fright. This newcomer is also this strong? And why did I say also? He was still worried that Hela would be tricked by the corrupted blood, but he did not expect Tolian to be heavily injured at the critical moment. If it was me, Austin could not help but put himself in the shoes of the battlefield, only to realize that he was also in a precarious situation. Although he had all sorts of purification spells, the corrosion of the death energy was endless. Even if he could purify himself 8 or 10 times, he would still be attached. The only solution was to avoid being hit by the death energy as much as possible. In that case, while some beyond grade as might not necessarily lose to Hela, they would definitely be extremely cautious. On the field, Tolian was now in such a state. He was scared by Hela's sudden outburst and became extremely cautious. He was more inclined to defend and didn't dare to act recklessly. If he fought head-on in close combat, his body would be exposed, and it would be easy for him to be hit again. If he kite, he wouldn't be able to beat his opponent. It would be very passive, and he had no chance of winning. Therefore, he was in a dilemma. Tolian groaned inwardly. He had hit an iron plate this time. Hela did not care about her opponent's thoughts. Since Tolian was defending, she would attack. Using Tolian, who was wearing a thick shield, as a practice target, she manipulated the death energy to bombard him. Bang, bang, bang. One after another, the magic shields exploded into fragments, peeling off layer by layer like peeling onions. It looked like Hela was one-sidedly trampling on Tolian, pressing him to the ground and rubbing him against the ground. However, although he looked miserable, Tolian's beyond grade A mage status was not for nothing. With the support of a huge amount of magic energy, he was able to barely withstand Hela's frenzied attacks with all kinds of magic shields. This has become a war of attrition. It's a competition of who has more energy. Although I'm in a passive position, it's not like I have no chance of winning. It's just a matter of whether my Esper ability drains her energy first, or if I run out of magic energy first. Tolian's spirits were lifted. The demon race's true name, Liberation, allowed his cells to produce more energy. As a new beyond grade A, he believed that his species would undoubtedly have the advantage and could last longer. At this time, Hela frowned and also realized this. A war of attrition is not good for me. The Death Esper ability was powerful, but the consumption was also high. Hela did not have many energy recovery skills, and a main way to recover was to kill people and absorb life energy. However, this was a one-on-one battle, so there were naturally no minions to become her nourishment. Hela had just entered the beyond grade A realm and did not have much time to learn more energy training techniques. Thus, the upper limit of her energy was the main limiting factor, and endurance was her shortcoming. With a flash in her eyes, Hela's hand gesture changed. Streams of death energy gathered in her palm, turning into a vortex-like shape, and she cast a new ability. Abyss of the Dead. A strange mental wave suddenly spread out. Everyone's vision blurred, and the scene suddenly changed. Everyone around them disappeared, and they were the only ones left. They were surrounded by an extremely dark space, with only a faint light above their heads. It was as if they were at the bottom of a deep well. Ah! Suddenly, countless ear-piercing screams erupted from below. Everyone hurriedly looked down and saw that there was a void beneath their feet. The translucent faces of gray creatures filled the void. There were all kinds of species and all kinds of appearances. It was extremely crowded and densely packed. Every face was filled with pain and horror, and their expressions were extremely distorted. Their mouths opened and closed, letting out different screams. The endless sea of faces was like an ocean, bringing with it an extremely strange sense of horror. This scene had a huge impact on the souls of many people, and their sanity points plummeted. These faces all came from the soul fragments of the people Hela had killed. The essence was integrated into her Esper ability, helping her grow. However, the residue of the soul fragments was deposited, forming this abyss made up of the dead. At this moment, these faces suddenly stopped screaming, and their eyes all stared straight at him. They kept repeating the same sentence. Tens of millions, hundreds of millions of words overlapped together, forming a grand sound wave with ethereal echoes. Become one with us. The next moment, countless tentacles suddenly rolled out from the sea of horrifying faces. These tentacles were made up of pale arms connected like chains. They constantly merged, stretched, and thickened. One by one, the tentacles climbed onto everyone's legs, grabbing them tightly and pulling them down. "Let go of me! Help! Help! Don't grab that place!" The extremely realistic feeling of falling hit them, and many people screamed in fright and hurriedly struggled. In the next moment, the scene before his eyes shattered into pieces that filled the sky. Many people who were covering their eyes hurriedly opened their fingers and observed their surroundings through the gaps between their fingers. They found that they were still in the same place, and everything just now was just an illusion. Everyone broke out in cold sweat. However, these spectators were only slightly affected by the aftermath. Tolian was the real target. No one knew what horrifying scene he saw, but he was stunned and stopped all movements, as if his sanity points had been reset to 0. Taking a closer look, everyone was shocked to find that a phantom had grown out of Tolian's body. This was his spiritual body, and half of it had been pulled out by Hela and was frantically struggling. If they could see the status bar, they would know that Tolian was in multiple negative states such as fear, out of control, and chaos at the same time. The death energy had a mental attribute, and Hela had also obtained a special attack on the mind. Abyss of the Dead was a mind control skill that could pull out the target's soul. Both parties would wrestle mentally, causing the other party to temporarily lose control of their body. Therefore, without the shield to replenish, countless death energy blasted Tolian's body, instantly riddling his body with holes. Stop! Tolian's spiritual body was trying to break free from Abyss of the Dead, and when he saw this scene, he could not help but be furious. This was his own body. Unable to control it, he could only watch his opponent wantonly abuse him. Seeing that he was about to be beaten into a pile of minced meat, he immediately became anxious. Hela, however, turned a deaf ear, as if she was determined to beat Tolian to a pulp on the spot. Seeing this, Tolian was terrified and hurriedly shouted, "Stop it! Stop fighting! Stop fighting! I surrender!" He just wanted to make a name for himself, and did not expect to fight so desperately. Hela narrowed her eyes and suddenly turned around. A burst of death energy shot out and sent Tolian flying, and the effect of Abyss of the Dead was lifted. Tolian's spirit broke free from the control and hurriedly returned to his body. The next moment, a wave of intense pain came from all over his body, and his spirit was even more dispirited. He had obviously been severely injured. "I'm afraid it will take a few years to recover from such injuries." Tolian's face twitched, and he hurriedly retreated. While recovering from his injuries, he stared at Hela warily, afraid that she would pursue him. Seeing this, Hela retracted the death energy into her body, glared at Tolian, and sent out a cold mental wave. Scram! Hearing this, Tolian was furious, but when he caught a glimpse of Hela's indifferent face, his fear immediately suppressed his anger, and he did not dare to flare up. "Hela, right? I'll remember you." He gritted his teeth, turned around, and flew toward the arcane church's fleet. It would be a lie to say that he was not annoyed. Tolian originally wanted to obtain his first victory as a beyond great here and use aims as a stepping stone. However, he did not expect to meet a strong opponent here and become someone else's stepping stone, giving someone else a chance to make a name for themselves. Other than a defeat, he did not gain anything from this trip. His spirit was damaged, and it would take a few years for him to recover. This made Tolian furious. Since he had already lost, Tolian did not have the face to say anything. Furthermore, in front of Black Star, he did not dare to say anything. What if Black Star took it seriously? Thus, he simply retreated. The arcane church's fleet picked up Tolian, turned around, and left with his tail between his legs. You're not stopping him? Ames glanced to Han Xiao. He lost, so there's no need to make things difficult for him. Han Xiao shrugged. Tolian, this weirdo, was a combination of arrogance and loyalty. He did not give Han Xiao a reason to make things difficult for him. Furthermore, the damage caused by Hela was enough to make Tolian suffer. Just the reduction of his lifespan was enough to make Tolian suffer a huge loss. When he found out the truth, who knew how much he would regret his decision today? Since the other party was the unlucky one, Han Xiaoxin could not be bothered to argue with him. Looking at Hela slowly flying back, Han Xiao smiled and said to Ames, "The news of this battle will spread soon." The news of this battle will spread out very soon. It won't take long for the other organizations to know that there's a new Beyond Grade A in the universe. It's finally your turn to have a headache. Ames chuckled. What's my headache? Back then, when you became a Beyond Grade, you directly became independent. What do you think the chances of you keeping Hela by your side are? Ames's lips curled up. People's thoughts will change with their strength and status. Can you make a Beyond Grade A willingly work for you? It's 50-50. Han Xiao did not comment. Even if she becomes independent, she'll still be an ally with us. The worst outcome is still a good thing. This time, a teleportation gate appeared beside the two of them, and Austin flew out with a smile on his face. Black Star, congratulations. Your officer has become a Beyond Grade A super. Now, there are a total of 6 Beyond Grade as in the Shattered Star Ring. I think Cisco is going to be autistic. Hasn't he been autistic for a long time? Ames smiled. The three of them chatted for a while before Hela landed at the dock and walked over. Austin's eyes sparkled, and he took the initiative to talk to her. He loved meeting new people the most. Hela and Austin knew each other, but before today, due to the difference in strength, they only had an impression of each other. Now, they could finally communicate as equals. She responded with a few words and was as cold as ever. Austin did not mind. After establishing the foundation of their relationship, he bade farewell to everyone and left with the Palace of Hidden Spells. The onlookers are finally gone. Han Xiao looked at the shrinking teleportation gate and could not help but curse. This time, Hela turned to look at Han Xiao's doppelganger, paused, and slowly said, "Wait for me to go back. I'll have a good chat with you. I'll wait for you at the headquarters." Han Xiao nodded. He knew that what Hela wanted to talk about was probably related to her future plans. To an old friend like her, it was not appropriate to use his doppelganger to talk about such important matters. Hela nodded and walked away. She felt that there was nothing to talk about with his doppelganger. After all, a metal lump was not as handsome as the real person. At the same time, Bennett, who was waiting for news in the Blue Star government building, finally received the report that the enemy had been defeated by Hela. He immediately heaved a sigh of relief. After reading the battle report, the relief on Bennett's face gradually turned into relief. Hela has also become a Beyond Grade A super? Doesn't that mean that our Blue Star has 2 Beyond Grade As? What a small probability. This is Blue Star's blessing. Bennett sighed. He could not help but think of the old rival that he had been entangled with for half his life. Although you've done many wrong things, you bastard, you've nurtured 2 protectors for our planet. Your merit is boundless. That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.